Hello, welcome back. I'm Giovanni Hall Art. Today I will be doing the colors, the base colors for this drawing, and hopefully the shading, and going from there. It's gonna be a late night stream. We have a chill one, and we're gonna get into it. I'm gonna continue off from the last podcast I was watching, so we'll finish that up for Rotten Mango. So yeah, I'm Giovanni Hall Art. You can find me on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, X, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, and Patreon for more. Yeah, let's get into it. All right.
And later, it's all over the news. The shooter has been caught at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So Larry says he goes back to the McDonald's. He asks the employees, was that the guy? Was it this McDonald's that he was arrested in? And they said, yeah.
I said, was I here when he came in? And she goes,
You were sitting right there in front of him. You were making jokes that he was the shooter. He thought that was crazy. He said, he must have heard us when he walked in, but he had no reaction because we were talking pretty loudly. We were right there. They said that the shooter was sitting in the corner eating hash browns. He does note that he was surprised that the shooter stayed as long as he did, considering he's on the run. But again, at the time, he did not really think that. Larry did not think that that was the United shooter, but one of the employees at McDonald's clearly did. A 26-year-old man is promptly arrested at McDonald's, and I'm sure you've all seen the news by now. That man is Luigi Mangione. He was considered a missing person. His mom filed a missing persons report for him November 18th of this year, but apparently he hasn't been in contact with his family for the past few months. In his backpack, police allege there was a 3D printed ghost gun, a 3D printed silencer, a loaded Glock magazine with 6 9mm rounds, and apparently multiple fake IDs, including one that was allegedly used to check into the New York City hotel by the person of interest in the pictures. There was a U.S. passport, $10,000 in cash. The police allege that there was $8,000 in USD and $2,000 in foreign currency, which is going to be debated later. They state that there was clothes, face masks that were similar to what the suspect used, as well as a water bottle and a kind bar wrapper with fingerprints allegedly matching those found near the crime scene. They also state that they found a spiral notebook containing entries and thoughts, as well as almost like to-do lists, as well as a 3-page manifesto that legacy media did not want to release. All these networks had his manifesto in possession.
You're kidding me.
They would quote from it here and there. Ken Klippenstein is the independent journalist that released it. And he writes, my queries to the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, and NBC to explain their rationale for withholding the manifesto while gladly quoting from it selectively have not been answered.
That is some wild stuff.
Yeah, the research for this case was very disorienting. I would go onto mainstream media and the rhetoric, the tone was so disconnected from even their own comment section. Not even just Twitter and their own comment sections.
Their own audience.
Their own audience is like, are you dumb? But the manifesto reads in full. To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, and a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info in there. I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the largest company in the US by market cap, behind only Apple, Google, Walmart. It has grown and grown, but has our life expectancy? No, the reality is these indecipherable words, have simply gotten too powerful, and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corporation and greed decades ago, and the problems simply remain. It is not an issue of awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play.
Big
Evidently,
Momo.
I am the first to face it with such
It's based off a
honesty.
cosplayer.
The spiral notebook, at least as of right now, hasn't been fully released, but there are sources that state he had brief ideas, considerations of bombing Manhattan, but decided against it because it would, quote, kill innocents. So he went for a far more targeted approach, writing, "So then what do? You go to the annual parasitic bean counter convention to whack the CEO. It's targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence. What would be better than killing the CEO at his own bean counting conference?" Which, side note, let's not forget, this is alleged. You can write whatever you want on whatever piece of notebook in your possession. That would be free speech, right? So just keep in mind, people are innocent till proven guilty in the court of law. Perhaps Luigi was so delusional that he truly believed that United's top executives gathered together to count how many pinto beans they each have, right? Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. You can write whatever you want. That doesn't necessarily imply guilt. Or maybe he thought this was a plot of a movie that he could sell to Netflix. Again, take everything with a grain of salt, but the police are saying this is like a slam dunk case. Just saying. In his Goodreads account, he did state that he wanted to read the biography of the creator of the atomic bomb, and he did rate the Unabomber's book 4 stars, so there's that. However, what does that even really mean, right? I could rate any book 5 stars. In the midst of researching this case was when Luigi Mangione was arrested while I was in the midst of researching, and the shitstorm just began. This man's entire digital footprint comes out within a day or two since his arrest, and probably more so trickling in now. Netizens found his Twitter account. This guy seems very normal. He liked posts about caffeine. It's amazing how caffeine really is the only drug that has reached this level of social acceptance. Imagine someone saying, the first line of cocaine in the morning is one of my favorite things in life. Or, without my morning joint, I can't function. He reliked this. Or just a forum screenshot. Again, not his words, just a repost, but maybe it can shed some light on his viewpoints. The screenshot is of someone asking the question, "What are your thoughts on this quote? It is no measure of good health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Someone responds, "Those who feel strong aversion to adjusting to a maladjusted society are deemed mentally ill, alcoholics, substance abusers, or slackers. They are corralled into a 12-step group and or a mental hospital or placed on medication or even just shunned, all in the attempt to make them conform and fit in when what really needs to happen is change in the society itself." He reposts another quote, "Being smart makes you more prone to confirmation bias." Luigi allegedly elaborates on this viewpoint, stating, "In retrospect, it shouldn't have been surprising. Confirmation bias is what happens when that little lawyer in your head takes control of your thinking process, and smart people have a very smart little lawyer in there." To which netizens have commented, "Yeah, well, you better get a lawyer a call." They find Luigi's Instagram, which has since been taken down, his Goodreads account, like I was telling you, also taken down, his LinkedIn, and it shows that he graduated in 2020 with a bachelor's degree from the Ivy League UPenn, and then eventually went on to get a master's in computer science and minor in mathematics. He was even valedictorian at his private prep school he went to, Gilman. It's this elite all-boys school that costs nearly $40,000 per year for high school. He gave a valedictorian speech where he explains, "The teachers at Gilman influenced me especially. They encouraged less of a desire to achieve high grades, but instead encouraged more of an excitement to explore academic topics outside of the classroom."
I have to remember that a valedictory, by definition, is a farewell. It's been an incredible journey. Thank you.
While netizens are constructing this profile of the alleged shooter, they're getting more confused because I don't think this is who they thought it would be in the beginning. And it seems like this is what netizens describe as the healthcare industry's worst case scenario of who the shooter could be. Because the shooter is not a minority. The shooter is not from an underprivileged class. The shooter is well-educated, Ivy League educated, from a privileged class, is a white, attractive male. It's a very interesting profile that starts coming together. He says that he wanted to study biology and AI. He was on the robotics team. Side note, former classmates of Luigi's have spoken out. And one former classmate says,
"But everyone just knew him as like a quiet, reserved, nice kid. He was obviously really intelligent, and everybody can tell that by his resume, of course." Yeah.
It's been said that even his family is of a very prominent, influential family in Maryland. His grandfather allegedly made a lot of money as a real estate developer who owned country clubs, nursing homes, They are related to healthcare. They have connections to healthcare and even a radio station. He passed away in 2008 from a stroke. His grandmother passed away in 2023 from Parkinson's. So Luigi's grandparents, they pass away, but his parents themselves are also doing well for themselves in the family business. There's actually quite a lot of debates on whether or not Luigi and his family could potentially be wealthier than Brian Thompson.
Wow.
Brian Thompson's net worth is estimated to be around $43 million. It is unclear what the Mangionis are worth exactly, but people find it an interesting discussion. Perhaps even more riveting is the fact that Luigi is allegedly included in a will from his grandmother that could be anywhere between $30 million to $100 million. It's not just for Luigi himself, but they have a very large Italian family. Anybody who is charged and convicted of a felony forfeits their right to any inheritance. So it appears that if that is true, Luigi does not care for money.
Wow.
And there's a lot of money in his family. They donated over $1 million to the local hospital, Greater Baltimore Medical Center. The unit for high-risk obstetrics has the Mangione family name on there. They have the Mangione Family Foundation that supports nonprofit healthcare facilities. They run a real estate healthcare connected empire with nursing homes. Even more fascinating is Luigi's immediate cousin is Nino Mangione. He's a Maryland state delegate known to be quite conservative. He describes himself as, quote, conservative Republican fighting for freedom and the future of Maryland. He actually had to cancel his political fundraisers because of Luigi's arrest. He states, because of the nature of this terrible condition involving my cousin, I do not believe it is appropriate to hold fundraising events scheduled this Thursday. I want to thank you for your thoughts and prayers and support. My family and I are heartbroken and ask that you remember the family of Mr. Thompson in your prayers. But like I said, it appears that Luigi has not been in contact with this very wealthy family because they reported him missing a month ago, and they state that they haven't spoken to him in months. And I think once people start digging into Luigi, getting his Twitter, Goodreads, Instagram, the question is, why did he kill Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare? One of the last quotes that he ever liked on Goodreads is from the Dr. Seuss book, The Lorax. It reads, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. Some netizens have joked that the Lorax radicalized Luigi, but is that really why? The shell casings on the bullet used to kill Brian Thompson, there were 3 left behind at the crime scene, and there were 3 words etched into each of the bullets. One bullet says delay, the next one says deny, and the last one, interestingly, says depose. Depose means to remove someone from office or power, to dethrone someone.
Oh my God, I didn't know it was like 3 separate ones. I
Yes.
thought it was all engraved on one of them.
3 separate ones, 3 shots fired.
That's even more like,
A lot of thought,
Yeah.
a lot of planning. Now, it seems to be a reference to the book called Delay, Deny, Defend, which is a book written about how insurance companies get away with denying care and denying claims. Literally, they will deny and delay the payment of justified claims, deny payment altogether, and then eventually they'll defend their actions by forcing customers to enter in these very pricey litigations that they know that they're not capable of doing. One netizen writes online, when I delivered my son 16 years ago, I had 2 different insurance plans, one through my employer and another through my husband's employer. Both of them were allegedly United. 2 plans, right? So better coverage, right? Wrong. United Healthcare spent months arguing with itself over which of our plans would cover what medical expenses, during which time the hospital were still billing me, sending me to collections, etc. My son then got sick at 7 weeks, another hospitalization, another round of arguing which plan was going to pay what. Long story short, $15,000 in medical bills within 7 weeks, 2 insurance plans, bankruptcy due to medical bills that United Healthcare wouldn't cover because it couldn't figure out which of their 2 policies was going to pay for it. Bankruptcy, 2 insurance plans, gotta love United Healthcare. Delay, deny, defend. Another writes, my mom is currently dealing with United Healthcare, saying she has almost reached her lifetime max.
In the past, in Ontario, we're not
a month or two left. She has stage 4 cancer and there was no evidence of disease, but she gets treatment every 3 weeks to keep the cancer away. My parents have tried everything. Marketplace insurance does not cover her drugs. She tried to get a job just for insurance, but hasn't found anything. Now we just found out that her cancer is back and she is starting new chemo. Her doctor's advice was for my mom to divorce my dad so she could qualify for Medicaid. What kind of country do we live in? What kind of company would just allow someone to die for profit? Her chemo is $30,000 a month. No one has that kind of money. She cannot get a job now because she's sick from chemo. We're hoping to figure out what to do with her. It's the last thing someone who is fighting for her life should be dealing with. Delay, deny, defend. Medical divorce is actually quite common. There was a heartbreaking story a few years ago, and this is just one story that gains a lot of traction, but this happens on a daily basis where a woman was engaged to marry the love of her life. She has brain cancer. They had this beautiful wedding ceremony, but they could not get married legally because she doesn't want to pass on medical debt to her husband. Another netizen writes, my 52-year-old mom felt like her cancer was returning and was growing. United Healthcare denied a scan my mom needed. They were delaying it, saying she needed to wait 8 more weeks because it hadn't been long enough since her last scan. At any rate, without a scan, chemotherapy cannot be restarted or any sort of radiation treatment. We could not afford to pay thousands out of pocket. My mom was barely working. Her coworkers donated their own sick hours at work so that she could keep her insurance, because if you get fired from your job, you lose your insurance. We were barely scraping by. Things were stressful and money was already so tight. And after some ER visits and multiple medical issues, the time finally came. The time United said we could get a scan. The scans. The cancer had already spread to my mom's brain. But now it was too late for anything to be done. We were told that they would have needed to start treatment weeks ago to prevent it from getting to that point, and there was pretty much nothing that could be done now. She was the kindest and most caring person. She cared about everyone she met. One day, after we bought groceries with most of the funds we currently had left, I was driving home and she rolled down her window and handed a man without a home $20 and gave him a big smile. $20 was a lot for us at that time. She looked at me and said he needed it more than us and that we would be okay. I smiled and I nodded back. United robbed us of more time with my mom. Maybe she wouldn't have lived another year with the scan and chemo when she first noticed returning symptoms, or maybe she would have lived a few years. We don't really know, but without the scan, without the chemo, without the radiation, they were actively taking coins out of the meter of her life instead of just refusing to feed it. United Healthcare profits not just by denying claims, but also largely profits by delaying services. They hold on to their money and save thousands of dollars on my mom and people like her by essentially letting her die more quickly and not having to pay for additional chemotherapy or for radiation, extra doctor's visits, and fewer overall hospital visits. They're a criminal enterprise operating under our noses by lining the pockets of lawmakers, forcing smaller healthcare facilities and independent pharmacies to close, limiting access to healthcare locations to millions of Americans, especially in smaller towns, delaying life-saving services, all while profiting billions and more every single year. That CEO died a far too quick and comfortable death in comparison to my mother and people like her who are suffering every day and barely get by financially, physically, and mentally, while modern-day mobsters toy with their lives for profit. When that shooter's story finally comes out, it's going to resonate with many of us. I've always thought myself a very impartial juror, very open to facts and fair punishment and treatment and playing by the rules, but I don't think I could, in good conscience, find this person guilty in a court of law. You may say, who are you to say he should pay with his life? I would respond with, who are you to say that my mom and innumerable other Americans should have paid with her life and by suffering just to simply line his pockets with a few extra bucks? I'm an atheist. However, it's days like this that I wish there was a hell, because it's people like the United Healthcare CEO who deserve to spend an eternity suffering for what they've done to others for their own gain. He and United Healthcare are not out here starving on the streets, stealing a loaf of bread to eat. They are dragons amassing wealth while raising our cities. Delay, deny, defend. And sure, if someone is heartless, they could blame the customers somehow by stating, well, it can't be everyone. But how is it that pretty much every division that United Healthcare touches, other than the shareholders and people making millions off the company, there's at least some people with horrendous life-altering experiences, even their own employees. One alleged United Healthcare employee states that once she got a call from a customer, a client technically, who's in tears, they were telling her that they were going to die because the medication that they need to live is $1,500 a month. They don't have that. And United, the people that they pay to be insured, won't cover it. She says her superiors told her the only appropriate answer for someone like that is to tell them, contact the drug manufacturer and see if they'll give you a manufacturer's coupon. The same alleged former United employee states that a man had called in once crying, stating that his doctor told him that he needs to get this very specific medication, but it's not covered. She Googles it, sees that there's a brand name version and a generic version. United will cover the generic version, not the brand name. And instead of thousands of dollars a month that he cannot pay, it's going to be $20, $30 a month, and United has to cover the rest. She helps him out, gets it covered through United. He's so moved, so touched by her generosity of doing the human thing, that as a way to show his gratitude, he starts sending flowers to their office to show her managers that she's stellar at her job, she should get rewarded for it, she should be promoted, and it's supposed to be this beautiful story with a beautiful end, right? She is reprimanded. Her manager tells her that she should never do that again on the grounds that the insurance rejected the claim for the medication. She went behind the insurer's back to find an alternative. We said no, basically. Don't go behind our backs and make us pay. She says, can you imagine paying into insurance and paying into a company that literally is designed to make sure you don't get the care you need, and then watching your kids, your parents, your grandparents, your spouse be unalived because you cannot afford these astronomical amounts that are not regulated at all? That's enough to make a person snap. I hate to say this, but this is what the employee says. Former, if you play devilish games, you're gonna get devilish prizes. Another alleged former employee of United says, the call that broke me was a woman calling in about a bill she received. Her 6-year-old just died from a brain tumor, and they were planning the funeral when they got notice that they were being sued by a doctor because United Healthcare hadn't paid a nearly $1.4 million claim. I couldn't really help her. Our call center was just for checking if something was in network or covered, but I could see her claim. One person remarks that the bullet casings having words engraved on them is, quote, that's what we call poetic justice. For a while, there were speculations that Luigi Mangione had United Healthcare and had encountered some of these insurance nightmare stories like everybody else. But it's been stated that he was never a customer of United. However, netizens are still putting the dots together. According to his Goodreads, in 2022, Luigi starts reading books about chronic back pain. The first is Crooked, Outwitting the Back Pain Industry and Getting on the Road to Recovery, and Back Mechanic by Dr. Stuart McGill. Also, Why We Get Sick, the hidden epidemic at the root of most chronic diseases and how to fight it. His X account header is an x-ray photo of someone's back that shows 4 giant screws in the lower spine, which appears to be from a back surgery that he might have had to treat a condition called spondylolisthesis, which is when one of the vertebrae in your spine slips out of position. It starts putting pressure on the vertebra below it. So your spine is made up of 33 stacked bones called the vertebrae. Your vertebrae are linked together, but they can move depending on how you move, change your posture. But if you have spondy, is what they call it, one of your vertebrae moves more than it should and slides out of its usual spot. It's now, the real pain happens when that puts pressure or even pinches a nerve in your back.
Can it be like repositioned?
Through surgery, which is rough.
Oh, that's why there's the
screws to position it. And once you screw it in place, I mean, you lose a good part of normal mobility. I mean, I guess it depends per person, but it's pretty rough. A lot of doctors don't recommend surgery because it's not going to be fun afterwards either. One doctor states the condition can be very painful if the nerves are pinched. Putting weight on your spine can hurt a lot. It's an excruciating type of pain, and it doesn't go away with conservative management. Medications aren't going to help. Injections aren't going to help. It can lead to high impact chronic pain. This is chronic pain that will impact daily acts, schoolwork, daily self-care, work. These people are more likely to struggle with mood, with one's ability to get restorative sleep, to manage the distress and anxiety that can naturally occur with pain. That's going to be disrupted. You can't even sleep. Another doctor states, for someone with spondy, physical therapy can be excruciating and won't necessarily help. It's sort of like a torture. Luigi had briefly done a remote stay in Hawaii as he was remote working. He was staying in this dorm-like structure with a bunch of people that were working remote. And the landlord of that structure says, when I first interviewed him, because they all have to be interviewed, they want everyone to get along. It's like a co-living situation. When he moved in, I remember he said he had a back issue and he was hoping to get stronger in Hawaii. Luigi allegedly told the landlord that he had chronic pain from a pinched nerve from a misaligned spine. Spondy. The landlord states, he said his lower vertebrae were almost like a half-inch off, and I think it pinched a nerve. Sometimes he would be doing well, and other times not. I mean, it was pretty traumatic and difficult that he just took one basic surfing lesson that beginners take. He was completely bedridden for a week.
Oh, this is just from a little lesson that he took?
No, so he had it already, and the doctors told him that he could be mobile.
Oh, okay.
And he should be mobile. So he takes one basic surfing lesson and he becomes bedridden for a week. So it seems that it exacerbated it. He went on to say that Luigi, quote, he knew that dating and being physically intimate with his back condition was not possible. I remember him telling me that and my heart just breaks. He said he felt sad for Luigi because Luigi is this young, smart, accomplished, upbeat engineer. He seems very much into being active, fitness. He loved hiking, surfing, all of these things, and he can't even do that anymore. But he does remember that Luigi told him he was going to get spinal surgery in 2023, so he texted Luigi. This is after he moves out of Hawaii. Luigi just responds, long story, when asked about how the surgery went. No more text messages after that. No matter how often he tried to contact Luigi, he would text him, yo, you awake? Where in the world are you? Nothing. Radio silence. Netizens were quick to find a Reddit account called Mr_Cactus that seems to belong to Luigi. He apparently liked to post about travel gear, Pokemon Go, spinal pain. Everything adds up. Age, college, what he was interested in. In one forum about Spondy, Luigi allegedly writes, I first aggravated my Spondy 1.5 years ago after surfing, a surfing incident. My back and hips locked up after that accident. And my whole lumbar and hips have been out of whack since then. Something is probably putting pressure on the sacral nerves that innervate the groin and butt area. He responds, yeah, it was when I was surfing about 1.5 years ago. Basically, the extension movement destabilized my spondy. A few weeks later, I slipped on a piece of paper and my right glute locked and right leg shut down for a week. I couldn't support any weight on it. Eventually calmed down, but the stability was compromised and the glute keeps thighs in place, I guess. He warns other Redditors, if there is anything tight in your hips, maybe check it out with a PT. Not to scare you, but, you know, my numbness has become constant. Numbness in his body.
Wow.
In another comment, he explains how he wants to get surgery because, I mean, likely he's in a lot of pain and cannot even be mobile. When there's a Redditor talking about how their surgeon won't operate on their back, he comments, keep trying different surgeons. If your back is broken and it's unlivable, age has nothing to do with it. Good surgeons understand this and will operate you on based on your symptoms and anatomy. Tell them that you're unable to work. Do your job. We live in a capitalist society. I found that the medical industry responds to these key words, I can't work, it's impacting my ability to work and make a living, far more urgently than you describing unbearable pain and how it's impacting your quality of life. Or plan Z, fake a foot drop or piss yourself. This is the absolute nuclear option, but there comes a point where it's just ridiculous that people won't operate on your broken spine. If this account is really Luigi, he's pretty consistent and positive with uplifting people that are suffering similar symptoms as him while acknowledging how debilitating they are. Because again, keep in mind, this is technically an anonymous account. He never releases his name, if this is him. He never says, hi, these are my friends, please look at my friends. Nobody knows it's him writing these comments. And when you see anonymous accounts on the internet, more likely than not, they are some of the most malicious people alive. But he writes to others, stop being sedentary when you're an energetic person and used to being so active is one of the worst aspects of this. But there are still ways to keep your mind and body active while you heal. I spent a lot of time doing yoga being mindful to avoid certain positions, which was very different for me than my typical routine of weightlifting and martial arts. But I actually have learned a lot and didn't mind the transition at all. Basically, there are still options. Using your body however it is currently capable will not only be critical for your mental health, but also helpful in your speedy recovery. There are always some activities that fall between your normal routine and nothing, even if it initially feels like it's the only option is being sedentary. Hope that helps. Sorry you have to go through this. In another forum about sleep and discipline, it reads, why do I feel like vomiting sensations throughout the day if my sleep the previous night is not good? Luigi allegedly comments, this has been happening to me since high school. I'm currently in college. Any night I would sleep less than 6 hours, which is a conscious choice, not unexpected poor sleep, I would feel nauseous. Is that unusual? I thought it was normal, to be honest. This is where it gets very interesting. A lot of people with chronic back pain have commented that it's not just your physical that declines. When the pain is so bad, you lose cognitive focus. It's not like you can lay in bed and still have a whole wonderful world in your mind or be able to be on the internet and be a part of society in some way. Mm-hmm. He comments on a post about brain fog and he writes, significant cognitive decline. Any thoughts? That's what the original poster writes. Luigi allegedly responds, I have been experiencing symptoms of brain fog since I was 15. I'm also a very critical, logical thinker like yourself. My symptoms were very minor at first and I was able to excel in high school, but the symptoms worsened exponentially last year after my fraternity's very tame Hell Week. I simply wasn't able to recover from a week of disturbed sleep. It's absolutely brutal to have such a life-halting issue, especially since the issue itself wears down the critical and logical thinking mind you'd usually use to tackle the problem. The people around you probably won't understand your symptoms. They certainly didn't for me. As each test came back negative, the doctors won't have a clue what's going on. I'm sure you already know most of this, but basically, I just want to say that you're not alone. Stay strong. If you ever want to talk, I'm sure there's a lot we can learn from each other's stories. He further comments that it could have been when he contracted Lyme disease when he was 13 years old. That's when he started noticing the cognitive decline. He says, after my symptoms severely worsened last year, I underwent several rounds of blood tests. 2 of them included Lyme. I'm not sure the specific test, but the results were negative. Do you think this definitely rules out Lyme, or is it possible to still have Lyme given negative results? Okay, the brain fog thing, I see a lot of people making fun of it on the internet, which I think is crazy. I know brain fog sounds like a silly little issue. I've personally dealt with long bouts of brain fog. You don't even recognize yourself. You want to pull out your hair. It impacts even the way that you see yourself, your whole identity, self-identity even. It was quite unexpected and unusually painful. He writes, working through the brain fog to get my degree has certainly been tougher than anything I ever thought I could handle. Granted, I went from almost entirely A's at a tough school to just passing my classes and not understanding anything, putting in probably twice the amount of work. There were quite a few times that I considered dropping out, but ultimately I decided that dropping would be much worse. The days when I don't have any work seems to be the worst. Struggling to understand lectures and homework is difficult, but having the same level of difficulty when trying to watch YouTube or read an interesting book is even worse. I can't even enjoy my free time. I think it's important to hold on to everything for as long as we can. Every year I've improved as a person, learning new things, meeting new people, etc. Last year, I ceased to tackle anything new and simply held on to what I had built up over the years. Soon it might be impossible to even pass my classes. At that point, it seems like the no-knowledge lifestyle is the only option, as you say. I also used excuses for why my grades started tanking. I used to tell my friends that GPA doesn't matter much for computer science, so I don't care. By hiding the symptoms, though, I stopped myself from getting advice from them, which has definitely turned out to be helpful. He's saying it's embarrassing, but just tell your friends, don't make excuses, because they could help you. He says, at the same time, hiding your symptoms only makes it harder for people to believe you once you finally reveal it to them. Last year was when it all started. I used to play chess daily against my roommate. I used it as a metric to see how the brain fog was improving. Eventually, I just stopped, since I could never, ever remember any strategy. He would use the same moves against me day after day, and I just wouldn't remember them.
So is this like a separate medical issue that he's having, or is it related to his spine?
According to his alleged Reddit account, it could be from Lyme disease. Netizens have argued both. Those with Lyme say, yeah, that sounds exactly what I'm going through. But also people with chronic back pain say, this is exactly what I'm going through. And the fact that he could potentially have both could have made it exponentially worse.
And then there's also at the same time no help, or
No.
at least it seems like he wasn't even satisfied, or something probably went wrong with the surgery, right?
Yeah.
When he say long story, it's not a good story.
No. In another Reddit thread, he admits to having visual snow, which is a neurological condition that a person experiences persistent visual disturbances. It's like seeing static over everything, just tiny flickering dots everywhere. It feels like you're stuck in a snow globe, visual snow. It's considered a pretty rare condition, but one netizen says, the brain fog and visual snow can be symptoms of the back condition he has. The pain can be so unimaginable that it leads to that. I talked about this in the past, but my family has a history of Alzheimer's, and it's made all my family very active in thinking of different ways to keep our brain alive, keep working and learning new skills, trying to find scientifically proven ways to keep our brains functioning at its optimum healthy levels. And did you guys know bilingualism is associated with a smaller rate of cognitive decline in older adults? Studies have shown that bilingual individuals may exhibit symptoms of Alzheimer's and other cognitive disorders later than monolinguals, so people who speak only one language. And I always think it's the hardest thing to learn a new language, and it's because you have to find the time, you have to find the right teachers. But now it is easier than ever, and it's actually fun. And that's why I love working with Rosetta Stone. It is the most trusted language learning program that truly immerses you in the language you want to learn. The program is available online and on the App Store, and Rosetta Stone has taught millions of people new languages for over 30 years. Instead of those traditional textbook methods, which never really stick with me, they use a learning method called dynamic immersion. It mimics how you learn your first language as a baby by surrounding you in that language, encouraging you to learn naturally. Rosetta Stone's True Accent feature will ensure that you get the vital feedback and your pronunciation, regardless of if you have a partner who is fluent in that language or if you're learning by yourself, is perfect. Don't put off learning that language. There's no better time than right now to get started. Today, Rotten Mango listeners can get Rosetta Stone's lifetime membership for 50% off. Visit rosettastone.com/rotten. That's 50% off unlimited access to 25 language courses for the rest of your life. Redeem your 50% off at rosettastone.com/rotten today for yourself or as a gift that keeps giving. Small Business Saturday just passed, and it reminded me of a very interesting fact that you can use at your trivia night next time. Did you know that small businesses employ half of the nation's workforce? I didn't know that. They're really the foundation and backbone of, I guess, like the whole economy. And if you've been thinking about launching that hand crochet business that you have dreamed about for years, or maybe selling your artwork on a professional scale, you guys always tag me in your artwork, and I'm like, how are you not, like, I want to buy this artwork. You're so talented. And the time could be now. With the new year coming up and Shopify's holiday special, make your any sized business dreams come true. Shopify is the most user-friendly e-commerce platform designed to help businesses of all sizes create, manage, and grow their online stores using these customizable templates. A lot of you guys may know that we've been loving Shopify for some time now. When we sold Grandpa Mango's limited edition art prints, Shopify took care of all the nitty-gritty tedious stuff. For example, everything was user-friendly, but this was just the chef's kisses, and it was the inventory tracker. It managed all of that and even provided alerts for when something is low in stock, so that allows us and you to focus on sending out more orders and doing all the fun stuff in a business. If you have a physical location for your shop, Shopify's point of sale system and checkout tools will work in tandem with your online store's inventory management as well. So once you start selling both online or in person, Shopify makes getting paid simple by instantly accepting every type of payment. The time is now. Make your any size business dreams become a reality this New Year's with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/rotten, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/rotten now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/rotten. One netizen who claims they have the same condition as Luigi, they write, I would often end my days whimpering on the floor because I couldn't keep going that day. I almost passed out in an airport bathroom, then realized I had been peeing on my shoe. it's hard to think when you're in that much pain. If your brain starts to shut down from the pain, it can affect your vision and give you visual snow. But it seems like, according to the Reddit comments that he's allegedly leaving, he seems optimistic about getting this surgery that he allegedly had in 2023. Prior to the surgery, he comments, the doctors, a bunch of them decided no operation is required for me anytime soon, but basically recommended I avoid any and all physical activities outside swimming and physiotherapy. Bizarre yet common advice from sedentary people who don't live life to the fullest. In my opinion, if your spine is broken and unstable to the point where you can't run, do you want to be walking around with it? What are you going to do? Wait until you take a bad fall and the instability causes some real nerve damage and you need surgery? The same account posts after getting the alleged spinal fusion surgery in July 2023. He writes that within days he was able to sit up on his own, stand, and even walk just fine. He says, quote, the surgery was not nearly as scary as I made it out to be in my head, and I knew it was the right decision within a week.
So it sounds good in that moment?
Initially, but perhaps the surgery did not go as planned, because one of his close friends allegedly states the back surgery is what changed everything for him. He went absolutely crazy. They said he went off the grid. He did not talk to his family. He did not talk to his friends. Nothing. He was solo traveling. Some state that he was probably in Japan for a brief moment in time. His friends were trying to tweet at Luigi saying, are you okay? What's going on with you? They say, hey man, I need you to call me. I don't know if you're okay or just in a super isolated place and have no service, but I haven't heard from you in months. You made commitments to me for my wedding, and if you can't honor them, I need to know so I can plan accordingly. October 2024, another tweet. Hey, are you okay? Nobody has heard from you in months, and apparently your family is looking for you. November 26, 2024. Thinking of you and prayers every day in your name. Know that you are missed and loved. November 27th, 2024. They just keep at Luigi, his handle. One of Luigi's friends said that he sent him an x-ray of his back after surgery, and they said it looked heinous. It just giant screws going down his spine. And this new information has caused a lot of netizens to relate to Luigi's story. I feel like everybody knows someone or they themselves have been directly impacted with the torture system that is the healthcare system in the United States these days. But some netizens don't care. They say, this is not an excuse. I had the exact same surgery at 21. I am now 46 years old. I live my life in pain and I've had multiple surgeries since. And you know what I didn't do? Murder someone. To which one netizen responds, do you want a high five for that? Others point out that we're all on the same side. Did you not just read what you posted? They write, sounds to me like you've suffered needlessly and terribly at the hands of private insurance companies. I don't think you should be so self-congratulatory about not killing someone over it. Most people, of course, would not have the gall to throw their life away like that. But he did. Others comment, chronic pain can send someone off the deep end. It eats up the brain, the soul. I mean, really, I have been there. Another comments, when chronic pain is really bad, even just a week or two with no relief, day in, day out, it's hard to even want to be alive. If his pain was that bad and he was in this state, I would imagine he decided to do something of consequence before he died. He could have been at the end of his rope, insinuating that he could have made the decision to self-exit by this point. Another writes, my dad has spondy, and when it first started, he turned into a person I barely recognized. The pain became so intense, he became bitter and threatening and upset. I get this. And remember how previously other netizens were saying, well, he's a coward for shooting Brian Thompson in the back. Mm-hmm. Some netizens point out that perhaps Luigi wasn't cowardly when he shot Brian Thompson in the back. They write, maybe it meant something. Regardless of Luigi's motive, Luigi has started what many netizens feel is a moment for class consciousness. I personally don't recall the last time so many netizens were united about something that is normally so divisive, which brings into the equation, what are Luigi's political ideologies? There have been debates on whether or not Luigi swings left or right, which there seems to be differing opinions, or maybe he himself is confused. He does consistently repost on Twitter famous podcasters and authors who typically have a more right-leaning audience. He also rated J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegy 3 stars, his book, which is not the worst rating, but considering he gave The Unabomber 4 stars, I'd say it's not a great thing. but he could be conservative and not a fan of the incoming administration. I don't really know. It's interesting that some netizens are trying so hard to figure out his political ideologies and see if he is in alignment with their own before deciding how to feel. I did see some point out, just for, I guess, being in depth, pointing out that there are red flags that he's read and rated biographies on Elon Musk, but he's also read the Hunger Games trilogy. So people are really confused because these two don't align. You know, Elon Musk, Hunger Games, they're not on the same page. He's also read The Little Prince. Some netizens cannot understand his political ideology based off his Goodreads account, believing there to be some green flags, some red flags. But one netizen comments, as an avid reader and librarian, I don't find his reading and ratings of some of these books as a red flag. I actually think it's really important to read things that are arguing oppositional views to your own. And some people are kind of losing the plot on this. One netizen comments that he rated Elon Musk's biography highly, so he is a red flag. Luigi is a red flag. To which someone responds, you can still appreciate something without agreeing with it. You can even give a book you disagree with high ratings if it gave you good insight into a new point of view or understanding that you, again, don't agree with. Others continue to argue, agree, but rating Elon Musk's 5 stars is a real red flag. He's wacky. To which someone responds, it was a biography of Musk, not a book written by him. You can dislike a person and still appreciate an author for a good biography. But then others point out that Luigi is very much into AI, so perhaps he is an Elon Musk fan. But some netizens also point out that he also seems to like Peter Thiel, and he has tweeted about him in recent years, which netizens don't like. Peter Thiel was a co-founder for PayPal. Interestingly, both Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are from the so-called dubbed PayPal mafia, which Elon Musk was fired from PayPal and replaced by Peter Thiel, so they're known to have a contentious love-hate relationship, but they both have very close ties to the incoming administration. Peter Thiel was allegedly the former mentor to JD Vance, the incoming VP. So their relationship is seemingly intertwined, and now people are calling into question, wait, whose side is Luigi on? But I will say, for this case, most netizens don't care. They don't care where he lies politically, at least not in relation to Luigi. They think regardless, this is a moment that we finally have to talk about healthcare, to open this meaningful dialogue. Do we really need it to be left versus right, when really what it is up versus down? It's who's at the top and who's being denied coverage and dying at the bottom. That's what it is. They're saying it doesn't matter your political affiliations when there are massive healthcare insurance companies denying your claims. They don't ask you, hey, do you like this person or this party or this politicians or this tech founder who's doing some crazy things? Like, do you like this person or that person? They don't care. And they're saying that anyone that's trying to have that conversation is doing a disservice to all those Americans that are getting denied coverage. Other netizens have taken to just joking about it. They think the fact that he favorited the bullet journal is kind of funny. They comment he may have misunderstood what bullet journal means. Additionally, many netizens really like Luigi based off of his Reddit account. His other accounts have his name and likeness. So all of his friends and family, probably the administrators at UPenn, can see his LinkedIn, can see his Twitter, his Instagram if they really want. But his Reddit account was more or less anonymous, and the way that he speaks, comments, and interacts with netizens, there is not a single mean comment.
Yeah, you can tell what kind of person he is.
Yeah, they believe he's a decent guy. He would tell strangers on the internet, you'll do great, whatever you decide. We can't be afraid to live our own lives to the fullest. Of course, always feel free to DM me if you have any questions in the future. Sorry you're also a member of this shitty back club, but know that you'll be fine whatever you decide. Or surgery is scary, but the sooner you get past this, the better. Good luck with the neurosurgeon consult.
Did you see the Chinese girl?
Yes. Okay, so there was this Chinese post that went viral on Red, which is a Chinese social media app, and she was talking about how her friend was at the same Hawaii dorms that Luigi was in, and the post has been slightly mistranslated. It's come onto American
Unless you have a story, you don't have a way to persuade people.
media stating that The girl was talking about how Luigi was so sweet. Everybody called him sweet. He was down to earth, very smart, very brilliant. And anytime he would eat ice cream from the communal freezer, he would replace it. So that was how it was translated. And it went viral in America. And people are saying that is so sweet because most people won't replace ice cream that they ever ate. But the truth of the Chinese post is actually much sweeter, because the post is her friend had just mentioned in passing, like, oh, I ran out of ice cream. And Luigi came with ice cream, and it was really well decorated. He took painter's tape, because I guess he didn't have ribbon lying around, because who has ribbon lying around? And he used the painter's tape to wrap it and do a little painter's tape bow at the top. But some netizens don't agree, writing, the guy pops out from behind a car and shoots someone who is defenseless in the back, killing him. And Reddit is over here saying, what a kind guy. I'm not sure kind is the right word to describe a killer who made generic supportive comments on Reddit. Another comment reads, yeah, he committed cold-blooded murder because of his overwhelming kindness. But a lot more people are supporting Luigi, even in the same facility that Luigi is being held in after his arrest. He's in Pennsylvania as of filming this. He's fighting the extradition to New York. If he goes to New York, he's going to be held at Rikers Island. But the inmates of that same compound, they're screaming out the window towards the reporters, Luigi's conditions suck. Free Luigi. Luigi's conditions suck. Free Luigi. Which one netizen comment reads, inmates shouting free Luigi and not free us should tell you everything about that man. But this interview by News Nation is actually quite fascinating. I've never seen an interview conducted in this manner. They told inmates, because the inmates were watching their show, so they told them to watch at a certain time. The inmates have TVs in their cells. They turn on the news and they can see Ashley, the host, talking. Then they have another reporter outside the prison and they can see him too, and he can see the inmates capturing all of this, and they're screaming out the window, responding to the questions being asked on TV. They're asked if their dinner was good, yes or no, and they scream, terrible, it was terrible, that's BS, because they release what the inmates eat every day, and they say, that's not what we're eating.
Oh, like fake food, fake photos?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like fake menus. The inmates later confide that they're getting punished for speaking with journalists.
If they can hear me right now, to answer yes or no, does Luigi have television in his single cell?
Yeah, this whole case is becoming more and more thick and crazy.
So
while inmates are allegedly getting punished for telling reporters to free Luigi, many security firms have stated that there's a lot of fear. Corporate leaders are now grappling with one critical question. How vulnerable are we? One security firm states companies that adapt quickly and take proactive steps to mitigate risks are not just protecting their executives, they're safeguarding their futures, such as Meta, that spends more than $24 million a year on security for its top executives. But for the major corporations that don't, they seem very nervous. Some top corporate security providers have reported a massive influx of calls from potential new clients. To put it simply, every C-suite executive at any major corporation now wants a bodyguard. Which, of course, netizens think is just dripping in bloody irony. Other netizens think it's slightly reasonable, considering new wanted posters have popped up here and there in New York City. Wanted posters for top healthcare CEOs. It shows Optum Health CEO, the CEO of United Health Group, Andrew Whitty, so Brian's bosses, and wanted posters with the now late Brian Thompson with a big red X over his face. The wanted posters read, wanted, denying medical care for corporate profit. Healthcare CEOs should not feel safe. United killed everyday people for the sake of profit. As a result, Brian Thompson was denied his claim to life. Who will be denied next? Deny, defend, depose. I will say, I guess subjectively this could be argued as being threatening, but I've never seen the NYPD so up in arms about something. The way they talk about these wanted posters is so bizarre. So outraged by these wanted posters, which again, I guess you could say they're not in good taste, but to be that enraged?
Just so ironic.
So ironic. If your ex-boyfriend made a wanted poster with your face, a regular civilian on there, posted them all over New York City, you probably wouldn't even be able to get a restraining order. The NYPD would be like, well, did he kill you yet? No. Did he commit a crime yet? No. Freedom of speech. Moving on. Next. Get out of our precinct.
Isn't that what some people are saying? Like they couldn't get them, like that this ex-boyfriend is harassing me for years and they wouldn't do anything.
Nothing. And here they are just up in arms about these wanted posters. So again, I think they're just making the situation worse. Alongside that are pictures on social media that are circulating of the salaries of the 8 biggest health insurance CEOs, along with their names and pictures, which is not illegal, by the way. These are publicly traded companies. They are required to release, I think, at least their CEOs and I think like a handful of their top executives, along with their salaries. This is public information, but NYPD does not like it, stating this has the capability to inspire a variety of extremist and grievance-driven malicious actors to violence. It's clear the police are very upset, and the netizens have said, matter of fact, let's talk about you too then. The NYPD budget for 2024 is $6.3 billion of taxpayer money. They say, what are you doing?
NYPD alone is $6.3 billion?
NYPD. A year. 1 year.
That's insane. Wow.
Yeah, and now netizens are saying, what are you doing to solve regular everyday people's murders, huh? Do you send scuba divers into the lakes at Central Park? Because that's our first time seeing that. Netizens also feel the way NYPD acts like they took a dangerous criminal off the streets before he potentially harmed normal people like you and I is goofy. The officer that arrested Luigi in Pennsylvania, his name is ironically Officer Fry, and Luigi was arrested at McDonald's, so people think the plot keeps getting thicker. He says, I can't say I was expecting it by any means, but it feels good to get a guy like that off the street, especially starting my career this way.
Officer Fry just started his career? That's crazy.
Which a lot of people believe highlights, again, how not in sync, out of touch, frankly. They're not saying risk your life and don't arrest people that need to be arrested, I guess, right? But they're saying, why make this statement? Say nothing. If you have, say nothing. They're saying the police, big corporations, mainstream media are so out of touch with public sentiment. Again, not saying that if someone is committing a crime, the police should do nothing about it. Just, I mean, there's got to be a better way for him to have said something about it without saying, yay, I might get a promotion so early on in my career. So great. One netizen comment reads, the NYPD just proved they have the resources to solve any murder by catching Luigi Mangione. Interestingly enough, they only seem to care to deploy them when the victim is worth $50 million. But another comments, this has so much more to do with the embarrassment and scrutiny this brought onto the NYPD than his net worth. This happened in the open brazenly in Midtown Manhattan. If NYPD did not catch this guy, they would look really, really stupid. As for how they caught Luigi, it seems to be just a phone call from a McDonald's employee that some people call a rat. But the NYPD says a combination of old school detective work and new age technology is how we caught Luigi. The police commissioner continues, we should never underestimate the power of the public to be our eyes and ears. Now the case will continue through the criminal justice process, and while we are proud of today's accomplishment, we must of course remember that there is a family in mourning. People say it's just another reminder of class consciousness. One netizen comments, all the effort and resources to apprehend him. If any of us were murdered, they would have no leads. There's a video of Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, who is, I believe, still under investigation for his own corruption. He's calling Officer Fry from Pennsylvania, the one that arrested Luigi in McDonald's. Yes, and the mayor tells him, we as New Yorkers appreciate it. You did a great job. You took a dangerous person off the streets. You're going to be the most popular police officer in your town.
I guess we found your guy.
Yes, we as New Yorkers, we appreciate it. You took a dangerous person off the street. We thank you so much. Well, you're gonna be the most popular police officer in your town.
And netizens said, okay, bet. And the police have been receiving threats for arresting Luigi. So I guess popular is subjective, right? Another disconnect between mainstream media and most netizens as well. Some netizens think mainstream media is overdoing the theatrics. Mainstream media writes that Luigi was a video game assassin. They write he once belonged to a group of gamers who played assassins in the video game. You scroll down, what's the video game, you ask? Among Us.
This is so dumb. This is so dumb.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. The McDonald's in which he has been arrested in has been flooded with 1-star reviews. Some of them read, McDonald's has a very big rat problem. More like Narc-Donald's, like a narc. Deny, defend, oppose, diarrhea McDonald's. Another comment reads, I should have realized something was wrong when the person who took my order at this McDonald's had weird looking whiskers. I didn't think much of it because I was hungry, but when I asked for cheese, they got really excited.
Now when you buy select $50 gift cards, you'll get $50 in bonus savings.
They're all a bunch of rats. Review, Rat 1, Humanity 0. This McDonald's is officially the worst place on earth. I walked in for a McChicken and what did I get? A front row seat to a Rat Olympics floor routine. A little demon sprinted across the dining room like it had unpaid rent. Frickin' rat. Why go here when Taco Bell is just across the way and they know how to keep their mouths shut? It's just a Ronin convention in there. A lot of people are really upset because technically there is no legal duty to report someone. If you think you see someone that resembles the guy that the authorities are looking for, you have no legal duty to report them. I mean, to be fair, you can't hide them in your home and get away with it. But if you just see something, you don't have to report it. So they're wondering, why did the rat from McDonald's, they say rat from McDonald's, call and report Luigi? On top of that, they think it's because, oh, the $60,000 reward? Well, guess what? The real news is they might not even get it. They might not even get it.
Why?
So they called 911 instead of the tip line.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the government goes through so many hula hoops to try and not give you the reward money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, delay, deny, defend is what the United States will do.
Basically.
Yeah. And it's like you have to wait until they're convicted. There's so many legal little hoops that you have to jump through. But one comment reads, if they get the money, whoever receives that money, I hope they use it for their health and still end up in debt due to denied claims. Then you have netizens posting pictures of Luigi and where he was the day of Brian Thompson's shooting. People have been photoshopping shirtless Luigi into their pictures, writing, what a busy month it's been. Special thanks to Luigi for his help on December 4th from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. What a long shift to never leave our site, not even once to even use the restroom. Customers really enjoyed your catchphrase, Luigi. I'll never go to New York City, and the only thing I hate more than hoods on jackets is guns. Very weird thing to say. Constantly, all day long to the customers, but also very funny. Put on a shirt, you goof. Yeah. Other netizens think this whole thing is crazy. Some netizens are still not over the fact that there was a lookalike contest in Washington Square Park for the shooter, writing, our generation is so unserious. But in a way, aren't we all him? Imagine he was actually there and didn't win. Others had very fascinating ideas, writing, oh my God, this is literally what I was LOLing about last night. What if all the New Yorkers just cosplayed him indefinitely? The CEOs would be having nervous breakdowns. Others say during his trial, we listen and we don't judge. Others didn't care for his lookalikes. They just cared for Luigi's looks, which fair points are made by some netizens. Objective attractiveness is objective attractiveness, I guess, okay? They comment, he is only guilty of being hot. Another one reads, Your Honor, my client Luigi Mangione is innocent. He was just demonstrating the true power of having looks that could kill. The only thing criminal is his bone structure. Another comment reads, good luck finding 12 jurors that don't want to fuck him. Yeah. Others believe that Luigi could be on the stand testifying and they would just hear blah, blah, blah. Whatever you say, handsome. Yeah. And another comment reads, my only question is, does he have a GoFundMe? Which there have been funds popping up here and there, but I will say I don't think Luigi will be using them. He does have 2 attorneys representing him already, and they are paid for. We don't know who's paying them, likely his family. I can't 100% verify this, but it appears he might have been streaming the song Criminal by Britney Spears prior to his arrest.
Really?
Which would be not fantastic, NYPD. Be deplorable, NYPD, if you are listening to this. We should actually have a whole press conference about it. Other netizens point out things they find ironic or funny about this case, which nothing is funny. about this case, NYPD. But they write, I think Luigi Mangione rating the Unabomber's manifesto a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads is so funny to me. It's like, yeah, that was pretty good, but like I could do better. One slightly unhinged, but I guess understandable netizen writes, currently consulting with an Etsy witch to get you out of this. Be strong, Luigi.
I just think it's so fascinating that, you know, this is the public reaction, right? It's so insightful. I think it says a lot. You know, it's a lot to be studied.
Yes, so much to be studied. And what is to be studied is the healthcare industry. So what's very fascinating and truly angering for a lot of people is even with this debate, I will say the people making the memes and editing Luigi, it's definitely a smaller group of slightly more extreme, you know, people. I wouldn't even call them extreme, just funnier people, I guess, right? But the generic public is, I'm not going to be sad about it. I'm not going to be sad about Brian Thompson's murder. And we should have these conversations about healthcare. Now, mainstream media is just picking from these memes, posting them on their little TV channels and saying things like, you know, the system is broken. We can all agree on that. But murder is wrong. And they're so focused on the reaction of netizens that all they have to say about healthcare is the system is broken and we can all agree on that. Why don't you talk about how the system is broken? Why don't you talk about anything else?
Yeah.
It's so goofy. No one believes you if you say stuff like that. Other netizens are just shocked and left rethinking their standing on this. They comment, okay, the CEO assassin is actually finer than I thought. Like, they could never make me hate him. So what now? Luigi has been charged with forgery, carrying a gun without a license, false identification to law enforcement authorities, and with tampering in Pennsylvania. Prosecutors have filed murder charges as well as other charges against him in Manhattan. He is fighting his extradition to New York City. Side note, there were a series of released mugshots of Luigi. One of them appears that he has urinated on himself. And some people were making fun of him, saying like, there's no way he's the CEO assassin when he peed himself when he got arrested. He's baby. But a lot of netizens who have dealt with chronic back pain and spondy and spinal fusion surgery, they say that for about 2 years, you cannot hold in your pee. And it's actually a really big part of chronic back pain that nobody talks about, because as an adult, you're expected to do certain things, and it really does break your own identity, and it is humiliating. When you feel like you have to pee, you can no longer hold it like any other adult. You have to use the restroom right now. You cannot hold your urine. And they believe that the police would not let him use the restroom. And he peed himself. And some netizens were actually pointing out, police have allegedly done this before, where if they really don't like a suspect, they'll try to get you to beg for things. They want to humiliate you. So they might have tried to get Luigi to beg them to use the restroom, and he might have decided he'd rather urinate himself. I think it was you that pointed this out, because we were talking about it over dinner, and you were saying he does hold his chin up high in that specific photo.
Yeah.
So it
that
might...
photo's like, you can tell his energy, like...
I'm not going to beg, and I'm not going to... So, again, we could be speculating and we could be wrong, but something to note. During Luigi's first court appearance, it's been reported that, quote, prosecutors tried to highlight the $10,000, the $8,000 in USD, the $2,000 in foreign currency that was found on him. Also, they said that he had a Faraday bag, which blocks electronic signals. The prosecutors suggest criminal sophistication with what was found on his body. Apparently, Luigi added during his first court hearing, this is when he didn't have an attorney, he said, I'd like to correct 2 things. First, I don't know where any of that money came from. I'm not sure if it was planted. And also, that bag is waterproof, so I don't know about criminal sophistication. Then during his next hearing, he's heard yelling while the cops slam him up against the wall. This is completely unjust and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and their lived experience.
As completely out of touch and as an insult to the intelligence of the American people and its lived experience.
Which has opened the door to more conversations about the mainstream media coverage versus social media coverage. Mainstream media reports this as a violent outburst. They're almost framing him as this maniac. Some netizens have even stated, people are making jokes about this, but be prepared for the media to hand-select photos that make him look as deranged as possible, which they've already started doing. They have started using a screenshot of him screaming where it looks like he's almost snarling at people.
Yeah.
Mainstream media also has reported that, quote, thanks to the hero McDonald's worker, that a dangerous criminal is behind bars. Yeah, and they say this is the same mainstream media that believe McDonald's workers don't deserve a living wage. Suddenly they're heroes to them. Another mainstream media host actually wished Luigi to die in prison. He has been denied bond at his arraignment, and his family, Luigi's family, has made a statement saying, unfortunately, we cannot comment on news reports regarding Luigi Mangione. We only know what we have read in the media. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson, and we ask people to pray for all involved. We are devastated by this news. In Pennsylvania, Luigi is represented by Tom Dickey, one of the few attorneys in Pennsylvania that's qualified to do death penalty cases. Not that this is a death penalty case as of right now. It wouldn't even be in Pennsylvania, but just to show he's a very qualified attorney. When asked if the so-called manifesto is enough evidence for the police, Luigi's attorney states, I know you can't tell, but I'm 5'6". But I could write on a piece of paper that I'm 6'5" and all other kinds of stuff. Yeah. So he's saying you can write whatever you want on a piece of paper. How is that evidence?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So a lot of people really like his attorney because the way he's just so blunt, for lack of a better words. Yeah. And he seems like he's having a good time with the media. As for evidence, he says he has seen no evidence against his client. He holds up both of his hands like he's trying to catch a ball. And he says, look, zoom in. This is all the evidence I've seen.
You can look on this table, and here's all the evidence I have right here, guys. So zoom in as close as you want to it. Nothing.
He also admits when asked that, yes, according to his staff, people are reaching out to him, trying to offer to help to pay Luigi's legal bills. CNN straight up asks him, why do you think people are offering to help pay his legal fees? He responds, the Supreme Court says all these rich billionaires can give all kinds of money to candidates, and that's free speech. So maybe these people are just exercising their right to free speech and saying that's the way they're supporting my client, which kind of shuts CNN up pretty quickly. So that's his attorney in Pennsylvania. Recently, he just retained another attorney in New York who, interesting, has a connection to another case that we've been working on. She is the wife of his first name, Mark, I believe, Mark Agnifilo. He's representing Diddy. And she's going to be representing Luigi Mangione. She is actually very well established. She's the legal counsel for the Law and Order show. She's the consultant to make sure that everything makes sense in the legal world. She's done a lot of good work, and she will be representing Luigi now. High profile attorney, very well connected, which is usually helpful. Now, Luigi's friends have come out of the woodworks to talk about him. Obviously, many people are speaking about his back surgery and the potential debilitating chronic pain he suffered from. But some people, most of them, are just talking about how nice he is. I haven't seen a single weird thing about Luigi yet. And they're all just surprised. They say even when we had conversations about capitalism and all these things, Luigi never seemed like someone who had an axe to grind. He was always very calm and chill. He was the leader of a lot of clubs. To which someone comments, in the club, we're all crying for Luigi. But one netizen comments, it's truly a testament to his character that even after becoming a suspect to a high-profile murder case, everyone that he knows and has interacted with has nothing but good things to say about him. And the crazy thing is, if you watch these interviews of mainstream media interviewing his friends, they're trying to trip the friends up, like asking, like, are you sure he didn't say anything crazy? Are you sure he never acted a certain way? All of them are so steadfast, like, no, he was like the sweetest guy ever. And then within 3 minutes, they end the segment because I guess it's not entertaining. They're not getting what they want, which is someone to hate Luigi. So I will leave you with the last remaining public sentiments I could find. Some people think that Luigi is evil, especially now that he has been arrested, his Goodreads account has been revealed, and all of these other things. And they write, great big round of applause for the law enforcement personnel who resolved this so quickly. Anyone who elevates this man as a hero is ignorant. Imagine a world where supposed vigilantes are heroes. You would be the next victim. Most netizens comment, sorry, I don't make enough to be the next victim. Or simply, why would I be the next victim? I'm not killing people by denying them insurance that they paid for. Another netizen states, those hailing him as a hero must confront the chilling reality. He took the life of an unarmed human being in cold blood, with the victim's back turned, a deliberate and cowardly act. Other netizens are more focused on the potential hypocrisy of the incident, writing, you hate capitalism, yet you come from a wealthy family? Another person comments, nobody cares. He wasn't trying to stop World War III. He pulled a trigger premeditated on a man for financial reasons. We shouldn't give him a platform. There is no rightful advocating for violence. Fuck him. Another writes, he is no hero and he is not God and he doesn't get to decide who gets to live. To which someone comments, neither can insurance companies. Heart. They comment back, and that's your justification for murder? What the fuck is wrong with you? What this man did was very sad, and he literally just ruined his whole life, okay? He could have used his privilege to help so many other people, but he was at the end of his rope. Or it's turned into a conversation about women loving criminals. Which, to be fair, I think there is a genuine case of it being alarming and hazardous to society, more so when people believe that they can change full-blown sadistic serial killers or think that a criminal is less guilty because he has badly done face tattoos. Yes, I do think it's alarming. However, I don't know if this is the most fitting case for that sentiment, but a bunch of men have taken upon themselves to say things like, oh, women love saying, I hate men because they're dangerous, but I love Luigi Mangione. Writing, Luigi Mangione has showed us the dark nature of females once again. Which is such an odd take when there is meaningful conversations to be had, but go off, Tiny King. They also write, these people, they need years of therapy. To which a lot of girly pops have responded in the comments. I mean, yeah, but they won't cover it, so here we are. One Reddit post has been getting a lot of traction this week. The title is, I'm disgusted to see how many people in America are okay with murder. And the body reads, I'm sorry, but I will never be okay with the killing of 60,000 Americans per year due to being uninsured or underinsured and not seeking medical care because of it. I will never be okay with American citizens committing self-exit due to being unable to pay medical bills. I will never be okay with the insurance industry in the US denying health insurance to sick and injured people because they want to maximize profits. Murder is wrong, that is all. To which the top comment is, murder is wrong, but if done through a corporation on a massive scale using tons of paperwork, well then, it's just a business, isn't it? But the general sentiment being, none of this has anything to do with Luigi or Brian Thompson. They write, I will be praying for the families of those who were denied services and suffered financial disaster, and those who lost loved ones because of needed services being denied. It's not about how attractive Luigi Mangione is. It's not about how awful the murder of Brian Thompson is. This is the true discourse we should be having. To which one netizen hesitantly responds, unfortunately, I don't think this guy is going to survive prison. I'm sure the elites want this guy permanently done. Others are considering nicknames for Luigi Mangione. Robin Hood, the Riddler, the Claims Adjuster, but some argue the defendant, murderer, killer. I guess the more fitting nickname depends on who you ask. And that is the current ongoing case of Luigi Mangione and the murder of Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, which again, Luigi is innocent until proven guilty, just like anybody else in the system. But what are your thoughts on this case? Let me know in the comments, and please stay safe.
I'm just take a quick little break as I'm saving my files. I think I'm gonna line up the mood. Probably just play a random YouTube, not random, but play this gameplay video of Detroit Be Human. This game I always wanted to play. But as I'm saving, let's go let this save. I'll be right back. Alrighty, I am back. Quick little bathroom break and drink break. Let's get back into it. Yeah, just backing up this file and saving. We'll start the next YouTube video soon. Here's save a copy. Here. Always save your work. All right. Let's go. I wanted to play this game, but it's not hard to play games right now. What things I want to do, so I'm just gonna watch someone play it. This game is not really about skill, it's more about selecting options. Let's see if he selects the same things I do. So old video, but something.
My name is Jacksepticeye and welcome finally to Detroit Become Human. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. I didn't know Scarlett Johansson was in it. Hey.
I don't know if I mentioned this, but I like your interior decorating. It really reflects your personality. I mean, I like it.
Oh, that's freaky. How'd you know it's in my house? Okay, get out of my head, witch demon! But I've been very excited about this game for a very long time because it looks cool. The topics that it's kind of tackling looks really interesting. Ever since I played the demo of it when it came out, and I really, really liked that. So I thought, I want to play the full game. I want to see what the entire story is. So I'm guessing we're going to start new story. It did ask me to pick stuff at the start. It asked me to pick casual or experienced. I picked experienced because it said that that was the case of being able to lose more characters, or the story was going to be a bit stricter, things like that. I think that that's going to be a lot more interesting. If I pick casual, I think I get a lot more do-overs, and I don't really want that. I want my decisions to be my decisions. So let's kick it off and start a new story. Yes. Okay. Let's go. But this is made by the same people who made Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls, and they're very story-driven games, very character-driven games, very dialogue-driven games, and you make all these choices and everything. So you know, I'm a sucker for these types of games anyway, especially for YouTube. So I'm wondering how. Oh. Hey, it's my buddy Connor. This is the demo section. I didn't know it started off the game like this. Okay, we kind of know what we're doing here. He's so cool.
I kind of want to play this game for myself.
I like Connor a lot.
But I kind of want to watch this, but I want to play for myself. Yeah, I'll watch the first episode.
Negotiator.
I really want to play for myself, though.
Hello, I am the negotiator, but you can call me Connor.
Ooh. I haven't played it yet.
Oh, happy family. Caroline, John, and Emma. Don't worry, ma'am. I am here to save the day. Oh, there was a thing back here. A little fish.
Please, you gotta save my little girl.
I remember this.
You're sending an android?
All right, ma'am. We need to go.
You can't do that. Why aren't you sending a real person?
Ow. I'm a real person. But that's the kind of conversation that I'm saying. This stuff is going to be really fun because it's almost like a...
It's like spatial audio.
It's almost... I don't know. I'll get into it in a bit. We'll just play the game to begin with anyway. Aw, a dwarf gourami. Leave or save. I'ma save the little pooker. You and me, we're the same fish. We can't feel emotions. And the humans don't like us. Okay, find Captain Allen. Ooh, but I want to look at the fish more. I know I kind of have to save the little girl and everything, but look how cute these guys are. Alright, moving on. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Okay, from what I remember, I have to go talk to Alan anyway before I can... Alan! Before I can do anything else.
Step in, just give the order.
What's the sitch, Kim Possible? Captain Allen?
Captain Allen, my name is Connor. I'm the android sent by CyberLife.
It's firing at everything that moves. It already shot down 2 of my men. We could easily get it, but they're on the edge of the balcony. If it falls, she falls.
Deviant's name, Deviant's behavior, emotional shock, deactivation code.
Do you know its name?
I haven't got a clue. Does it matter?
I need information to determine the best approach. Do you know if it's been behaving strangely before this?
Listen, saving that kid is all that matters. So either you deal with this fucking android now, or I'll take care of it.
Yeah, you've been doing a great job so far. But this is what I'm talking about. They call the android an it because it technically has like no gender, no personality. It's just a robot. And they treat them as lesser citizens. So it almost has like a racial feel to it as well. And I think that that's going to open up a lot of interesting story arcs and story choices and everything. And I'm always curious to see how far games go with that and how seriously they take it and how they implement it. And video games are a good medium for this type of stuff. Also, I've been in Detroit now. Now I know what Detroit looks like. I know what the people are like. I know what the place looks like. I know everything about it. Well, the street that I was on. Not everything. Okay. He stole the gun! He's a bad guy. Deviant took the father's gun. Sure did. It's a bad android. What was his name? Daniel? Okay. I'm at a 50% success rate. And I'm going for the hundo. Okay, I want to go into the girls' room. Excuse me, gentlemen. I'm just going to visit the little girls' room. Oh, that's a freaky teddy bear.
Where would it say that?
All right, play this sucker. Hi, Daniel. This is a joke. My humor setting is at 65%. All right, I want to do this properly. When I was doing the demo of it, I was kind of dicking around, but I want to make sure that I do this right. I want to make sure. Wait, can I save Daniel? I'm walking on sunshine. Music's cool. I mean,
yeah,
not only does the
intense.
game look amazing, but it sounds great too. Like, there's a lot of time and effort gone into the craft of this game. Also, Connor is my dude. Connor's the man. Robot man, but the man nonetheless.
All units hold positions. The negotiators going in.
Haha! Call me the negotiator from now on. That's what I want to be known as. Okay, let's check these holes in you. I mean, you might be dead, but at least you're aerodynamic. Let's reconstruct this bad boy. Because you dropped a iPad, right? There it is. Wingardium Leviosa. Oh, it's so atmospheric and vibey.
Your order for an AP700 Android has been registered. CyberLife thanks you for your purchase.
It's $9 grand for a robot? That's so cheap. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jesus! Oh, nuts. Okay, don't get me wrong. $9 grand. That's a lot of money. But for a full robot? Do you realize how much it is just to get those Boston Dynamic dog things to work? Oh, save me, Buddha.
That's how technology works.
I
The
gotta
more
check the
people
dead
get
man's.
it, more accessible, the cheaper it should get.
Don't assault. Calm down.
Well, except for phones from Apple. And
I hope if you're going to
PlayStations.
assault, you're going to a pepper too. Hup. Ding ding. Show me where the gun is, sir. As I said, this is all stuff that we've done already. So that's why I'm able to like blast through it. So I kind of know what's happening. So he got Emma. And then the first responder got in, shot him, hurt him, damaged him. Then he himself got shot and his gun went over there. Okay. %69%. You know what that means? Not enough yet. I'm gonna take the gun. Not because I want to use it, but because I want to use it as a bargaining chip. If I take the gun, show that I have it, tell him the truth that I have it, and then toss it away, then he might be more inclined to listen to me, to believe me, and trust me. Okay, your casserole is burned. That's fine. The family's about to have dinner. And they did have dinner, but they ate a dinner of lead.
Wow.
What the perp didn't know is that the negotiator was on site. This is America's craziest car chases. I don't know. Oh, she got blood in her Yeezys. This music is awesome. Eeh! Where are you going? Look! Okay. Controls are ass. Oh, Emma P, no. Okay, hostage located. Lads, I'm going out.
Ooh.
Stay back! Don't come any closer or I'll jump!
Okay, I kind of want to play this game myself and not watch it. This looks awesome. And that little ad right there, if I try to skip, is gonna copyright my video. It's so annoying. Checking this episode where I just pause. Any music was copyrighted. That should be a feature where it just automatically blocks copyright music for you. Just that 2 seconds right there when I upload this video will put my video at risk for a copyright thing. Luckily they don't strike your channel for that, thankfully. But still annoying.
Hi, Daniel.
Like start earning money on a video, they will get money from your page because for 2 seconds of audio don't even want to hear.
I'm here to help the motherfuckers. Go away! Oh my god, you're making things so much worse. Oh, it's even blowing the water out of the pool. That's cool. Cam.
I know you're angry, Daniel. But you need to trust me and let me help you.
I don't want your help! Nobody can help me! All I want is for all this
Okay,
to stop!
it's going back up.
I just want all this to stop! Are you armed?
Yes! I have some arms.
I have a gun.
Drop it! No sudden moves, or else-
Bargaining chip.
There. No more gun.
So we got some % out of that. That's good. Possible cause?
They were going to replace you, and you became upset. That's what happened, right?
I thought I was part of the family. I thought I mattered. But I was just their toy. Something to throw away when you're done with it.
Okay, calm down.
I know you and Emma were very close. You think she betrayed you, but she's done nothing wrong.
She lied to me! I thought she loved me. But I was wrong.
Daniel, calm down, bro.
She's just like all the other humans.
Daniel, no.
Daniel, no. Sympathetic.
Listen. I know it's not your fault. These emotions you're feeling are just errors in your software. No, it's not my fault.
Yes.
I never wanted this. I love them, you know? But I was nothing to them. Just a slave to be ordered around. I can't stand that noise anymore. Tell that helicopter to get out of here.
Get out of here, dudes.
The situation is under control.
Okay, give me those percents.
I did what you wanted.
Yes, trust.
You have to trust me, Daniel. Let the hostage go, and I promise you, everything will be fine.
Ooh, we're getting close.
I want everyone to leave. And I want a car. When I'm outside the city, I'll let her go.
That's not gonna work.
That's impossible, Daniel. Let the girl go, and I promise you won't be hurt. I don't want to die.
None of us do. Reassure.
You're not going to die. We're just going to talk. Nothing will happen to you. You have my word. Okay. I trust you.
Uh-oh.
Good dropper. Don't do it.
Uh-oh. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, Daniel, no, I'm sorry.
You lied to me, Connor. You lied to me.
Damn. Okay. I want to play this game myself. I'm gonna stop this video. This is intense. But it's so good.
It's so good.
Hey, he just said what I said. I want to play this
I like
myself.
that it said software instability. Does that mean that I'm starting to feel stuff now?
Yeah, I'm pausing it. I'm sorry. I want to play it myself. That's crazy. Cause let's find something else. Let's keep it lighthearted. As I'm working. That's so good. I gotta play that myself. Alright, we'll play this. A little dark, but you know, what can you do? We'll keep pushing. Alright, let's go.
On August the 31st, 1985, detectives across California had finally discovered the identity of a serial killer who the media had dubbed the Night Stalker.
Oh,
The
yeah, I know this
mysterious
one.
attacker was wanted for 13 murders across Los Angeles.
He was a psychotic, paranoid, Satan-worshipping psychopath who derived his pleasure from the combination of lust and violence.
After being chased by a mob of vigilantes, 25-year-old Richard Ramirez had to be rescued by two police officers who had inadvertently made the biggest arrest of the decade.
This one cop looks real close. He's, Jesus, it's the Night Stalker. It's Richard Ramirez.
At his trial, the most feared man in the USA declared his allegiance to the devil.
If you were going to set out to describe how to make a serial killer and a serial rapist, you could do worse than take Ramirez as your example. He has every possible constituent.
Richard Ramirez, the man known as the Night Stalker, had taken his place in infamy as one of the world's most evil killers.
I remember this. Well, I remember this documentary about this guy. Crazy.
It It was a series of gruesome murders that spread fear across California. When Richard Ramirez was finally apprehended by an angry mob in Los Angeles on August the 31st, 1985, it brought to an end one of the most prolific murderers in US history. Nicknamed the Night Stalker, the Satan-worshipping serial killer had terrorized the state of California for 14 months, claiming at least 13 victims. San Francisco detective Frank Falzon met Ramirez face-to-face 4 years after his conviction in September 1989.
About as evil as anything I can imagine. He was intent to hurt, and that's what people have to realize.
Frank worked hard to help capture Ramirez after the Night Stalker murders reached the San Francisco Bay Area in August 1985.
I served 22 years in the San Francisco homicide detail. Numerous cases were broke that I felt very good about. None as high as the Night Stalker. The fact that my partner and I and a few other gentlemen played a key role in breaking this case, it was probably the highlight of my career.
This killer's story begins over half a century ago. Richard Ramirez was born on February the 29th, 1960, to Mexican-born parents in El Paso, Texas.
He was the youngest of 5 children, and the family had quite a kind of turbulent life. So they lived in several different areas, many of which had quite high levels of industrial pollution. Some of his siblings had been born with birth defects, so this family had an awful lot of challenges. That's something that would come to shape Richard's life and those of his siblings. So he hasn't got the best start in life.
And life did not get much better for Ramirez. At a young age, he began rebelling against his strict Catholic upbringing.
I just realized something. Leg warmers are like socks. Do they go above the shoes or underneath? No, they go outside the shoes, so they're not like socks. I'm not really 100% sure how they work. Let me look it up.
He's 9, his brain is still developing, he's sniffing glue, he's smoking marijuana, there's emotional trauma that's happening in the family too.
Your feet will be exposed
His father
to it, right?
was a brutal, short-tempered man. I'm not suggesting it was classic child abuse, but there was certainly physical violence. And Richie Ramirez
Oh, they go
shrank
outside.
away, if you like, from his father.
Well, some of them
took
show them
refuge
outside.
in the company of a cousin.
Or do they go?
Ramirez's cousin Mike returned from the Vietnam War in 1971. He was scarred by the atrocities he'd seen and had committed as a Special Forces Green Beret.
So
No,
we have
some of
a
them go outside.
grizzled, damaged Vietnam vet, Mike, and a frail, probably suggestible boy. And Mike proceeds to explain to him the dreadful things he's done to Vietnamese women while in Vietnam. He's tied them to trees, he's raped them, he's beheaded them, he's taken photographs of it.
He came home telling stories of this to Richard, and he would boast about it. So Richard now has a real-life killing machine to look up to and to admire.
12-year-old Ramirez was fascinated by his older cousin.
So he starts spending an awful lot of time with Mike. He's quite a significant influence on young Richard's life, and he's very impressionable at this age. So this really is kind of cementing some of those ideas that he's had about harming other people in order to feel powerful.
And that must have distorted Ramirez's value systems and the way in which he responded to women in general. They became objects, they were not real, and they became, how can I put it politely, not entirely human.
On May the 4th, 1973, Ramirez witnessed an event that would cement his feelings towards women and his admiration for cousin Mike.
He keeps his gun in the fridge because he says he likes to keep it cool. And this is another thing I think that quite impresses Richard. And one day, Mike has a huge argument with his wife and ends up killing her. He shoots her in the face.
That's crazy.
And Richard is there in the house when this happens. What you've got here is a combination of things that have been going on. So a young lad who looks up to people who are violent, a young lad who hears stories of violence, and now he's actually seeing it happen.
Mike was a powerful influence in the direction of psychopathy, rage discontrol, and the merger, and this is the most important thing, the merger of sexual impulses and violent impulses into a single coherent force.
Now, the impact that must have had on a boy who's been taking marijuana with a man who he clearly hero worships, it must have scrambled Ramirez's brain.
And his reaction to it is quite interesting, because when he talks about it afterwards, he doesn't talk about how he feels seeing this woman murdered in front of him. He talks about it very objectively. He talks about the body falling to the floor, about blood spurting out of the wound. It's not about feeling disgusted or feeling traumatized or sad. He's just giving a very cold description. And I think this really does tell us what kind of person Ramirez is turning into.
Mike was immediately arrested. In court, he was judged to be not guilty on the grounds of insanity. Instead of prison, he was sent to a mental institution and released in 1977.
Ramirez, in the meantime, because he's removed from his hero, goes to stay with his sister and husband.
He's lost his idol, he's lost his role model, and he is basically now starting to ruminate and to think about the things that he wants to do. So he doesn't look after himself, he's very unkempt, he's dirty, he doesn't wash, and so he becomes even more of an outcast. So he very much gets lost in his own head at this point in time, and he's planning what he's going to do next.
Age 17, Ramirez was ready to turn his twisted fantasies into reality.
While he was still at school, he got a job working at a Holiday Inn, and he got a pass key for all the rooms. And he took it upon himself one day to decide that while the husband was away parking the car, he would go into the room that they just both moved into and he would attempt to rape the wife.
The husband comes in and he sees what's going on and basically beats Richard Ramirez to a bloody pulp. But this couple, they're from out of town, they're on holiday. They don't want to follow this up, they don't want to pursue this case.
The couple decided not to press charges. It was a lucky escape for Ramirez. Living on the edges of society, his behavior became more and more unpredictable.
So he's dirty, he's unkempt, he's sleeping in graveyards, he's increasingly kind of going over to the dark side.
That's
and
crazy.
the things that appeal to him are things that most people would find really odd and really bizarre, devil worship, that sort of thing. So he's gone on this trajectory now, and I think that's only going to go one way.
Aged 18, Richard Ramirez headed west to California. The Golden State would become his hunting ground. 5 years later, in June 1984, he would claim the first murder victim of a 14-month killing spree. Anyone was a target, and everyone was petrified. Where would Ramirez strike next? By 1984, Richard Ramirez had become a social outcast. Fueled by a hatred of women and a distinct lack of morals, the 24-year-old had settled into a life on the fringes of society in downtown Los Angeles.
He's with all the runaways and the throwaways. He's immersed in a drug subculture. So he had no brakes on him before, really, but now he's completely off the rails. And he does become Richard Ramirez, the serial killer.
On June the 28th, 1984, 79-year-old Jenny Vincow was found brutally stabbed to death in her Los Angeles home. Her dress was pulled up, suggesting a sexual assault had taken place. The knife wounds were so severe, she had almost been decapitated. Ramirez's reign of terror had begun.
In terms of what made Richard Ramirez kill, I think it was an escalation of behaviour. So he's been robbing, he's been burglarising people's houses, he has got access to people in their homes. And I think when you have that access and an opportunity presents itself, and you are the type of person who gets off on violence, who doesn't feel bad about hurting other people, then you are somebody who is likely to take advantage of that opportunity when it presents itself. So I think it's a gradual escalation of behaviour.
6 months after his first murder, Ramirez was in custody, but not for murder. He was arrested on a charge of car theft. He served 36 days in prison, but it was his mugshot captured on...
This could change your life. Let me tell you how. The recent conflict
12th, 1984, that would eventually lead to his downfall. Once released on March the 17th, 1985, his killing spree continued. Ramirez attacked 3 women on the same night, killing 2 of them. The attack seemed completely random, but appeared to have a sexual motive.
Well, Ramirez had as a specific part of his modus operandi to gain access to his victims essentially by surreptitiously entering their home. He was at his core a burglar whose object felony was sexual murder.
He's not someone who can form relationships with women, but he still wants women. He still wants to possess them and have his way with them. So he's only going to do that through violent means.
11 days later, Ramirez was on the hunt once more. He broke into the home of 64-year-old Vincent Zazara and his wife Maxine in the city of Whittier. Ramirez shot Vincent in the head, killing him instantly.
Then tied up his wife, who was 20 years younger, Maxine,
That's
demanding
messed
money.
up.
Where did she keep the valuables?
One of the things Ramirez would do would be he would restrain his victims. That's obviously got a physical impact. It means you can't move. It means you're not able to respond to an assailant. And obviously there's the psychological element of helplessness and powerlessness.
I'm gonna work on the
Ramirez
shadows real
shot her
quick.
3 times. And then he mutilated her, grotesquely. Eventually gouging her eyes out and putting them in a jewellery box to take away with him.
That's crazy.
Post-mortem mutilation is relatively uncommon in homicide cases. Most homicides that are dealt with day to day are cases where people have been angry or where there's a domestic dispute. They're not really the sort of planned, orchestrated murders that we see in cases like Ramirez. In those cases, you can see bizarre
We're gonna save
behaviour, both to the body before death and mutilation after death. And that's very much more about what's in the mind of the killer.
Vincent Zazara was a well-respected member of the Whittier community. He ran a local pizzeria after serving in the Second World War. His son, Peter, remembers his father fondly.
Well, my dad was a immigrant from Italy, came over in the 1930s, mid-30s, something like that. And he joined the Army. He was in World War II. He was in Patton's Army. He was one of his team members. He was in the Army for 6 years. He was in the Battle of the Bulge. He was a pretty accomplished person that way, and everybody respected him.
Peter remembers hearing the news that his father and stepmother had been murdered.
I was at home, and I got a call. He told me what had happened. And we drove up. I was living in Pico Rivera. We drove up to Whittier. And I just remember that how could it be possible? And I was just in a state of shock.
As Peter arrived at his father's house, it was surrounded by emergency service vehicles.
We met all the police outside. We were outside the front door with my fiance at the time. And I wanted to go inside, but they wouldn't let us inside. I was already really upset. He said, one of the detectives said that it would just make me more upset than I already was.
Vincent and Maxine Zazara had become Ramirez's 4th and 5th victims. Over 30 years later, Peter is still struggling to come to terms with the murders.
That ruined my life. It's hard for
I'll
me
be
to get
right
on with
back.
my
Just
life
get some
for-
water.
Screwed my life up a lot because of it. I would be a different person, I think. We were like kindred souls because he was also a veteran, I'm a veteran, and we were just really close in a lot of ways like that. Although my dad was very, very tough on the outside, he's pretty gentle on the inside, a lot like me that way.
Over the next 4.5 months, 25-year-old Ramirez became even more prolific. Between May and August of 1985, he continued to break into houses across Los Angeles County, killing a further 8 people and attempted to kill another 4. The whole of Southern California was gripped with fear. Although each crime scene was distinct, investigators began to link them based on the ferocity of the murders.
There was no question that this is a crime really unique in its level of terror. It was unique in its level of terror for several important reasons. One, the lack of predictability about victim. You could not, as a citizen, say to yourself, I'm safe because I'm not a prostitute. Or you couldn't say, I'm safe because I live in Beverly Hills, because there was no place you were safe in. And then what made it especially terrifying is the circumstances of the murders as they took place. One, that they took place often at night in the darkness, and 2, they took place in a place that you ordinarily regard as the safest place in the universe, your personal home. That made this terror beyond belief.
Ramirez's series of attacks were random and indiscriminate. Anyone could be targeted, men or women.
As far as we can tell, nothing attracted him to his victims in particular. He would often break into residences, not knowing who was in the residence, and end up, depending if it was men or women, killing them and perpetrating sexual crimes against him. Ramirez didn't have a particular age in mind. He didn't have a particular race in mind. He didn't have a particular socioeconomic status in mind. He was a man who had rampant chaotic impulses.
We were trying to do some
basically
shadow work.
Attacked and killed whoever was in the room when his rage inflamed itself.
Ramirez did not appear to favor any particular method of killing. He would murder his victims by any means necessary. And that made it even harder for investigators to decide who had committed the crimes.
He would stab, he would shoot, he would stamp, he would rape, he would force himself on people orally. Really, he just seemed to revel in acts of violence and violation.
And it was quite a while before the police actually realised that they had a serial killer on their hands. So here's somebody who terrorised Los Angeles, and they didn't realise that it was the same person who was doing this till quite late on in the day.
By August the 8th, 1985, Richard Ramirez had killed 13 people in the Los Angeles area. His lust for blood was relentless.
We are a species that craves to be in a feeling state. The serial killer, their brain is numb most of the time, so for them to feel, they have to do something that's the equivalent of smacking their hand. They have to create a level of arousal and intensity around them that boosts their affect range.
Despite the number of attacks in the short space of time, the police were unable to capture the man the newspapers were calling the Valley Intruder.
Well, Ramirez would have thought at this point in time that he is an accomplished predator. Because he's not getting caught, the police don't even know who he is. Not because he's brilliant at what he does, but it's because the police aren't putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Because his MO is all over the place, he's killing people using different methods, he's targeting a whole host of victim groups.
380 miles north of Los Angeles in San Francisco, Detective Frank Falzon was hoping the murders wouldn't spread any further afield.
I forget how they did
So we were
shadows.
hearing in San Francisco at that time about a valley intruder. The valley intruder was an individual that was breaking into homes in Southern California, predominantly the Los Angeles area, killing the husband, attacking the wife, ransacking the house, and burglarizing a lot of valuable property.
Frank had heard about the fear felt amongst the locals in LA.
Every law enforcement officer was aware, but this seemed to be a problem for the Los Angeles area. So the need for high attention in San Francisco wasn't happening.
But all that was about to change.
I don't
In
like this gradient
mid-August of
tool.
1985,
It's a new
Ramirez
version of
left his
Photoshop.
familiar killing ground of Los Angeles behind. The man known as the Valley Intruder was spreading his wings. Very soon,
give me a
he'd
regular
have a new
gradient, please.
nickname. Every cop in California wanted to get their hands on Richard Ramirez,
Okay, so it is regular.
the Night Stalker. By mid-August 1985, 25-year-old Richard Ramirez had killed 13 people and attempted to murder a further 5 in the Los Angeles region of California. His random break-ins meant that anyone could be a potential victim, and his cruelty knew no bounds. He would often brutally rape and torture women. Locals were terrified.
It was a summer of extreme heat, and people were afraid to leave their doors unlocked, afraid to leave their windows open. Purchasing of guns went way up in the state of California. I would say every active police officer within the state of California was looking for Richard Ramirez. He would have been a big feather in any police officer's cap for his capture.
Ramirez, aware of the growing media spotlight on his crimes, had moved north to San Francisco. And on August the 18th, 1985, Ramirez killed outside of LA for the first time.
It was a Saturday morning. My partner, Carl Klotz, and I were the on-call homicide team, and we received a call to respond to Eucalyptus Street out by the San Francisco Zoo. There was a murder. So we responded out there, and the crime scene that we witnessed was atrocious. The husband had been shot and killed while he was asleep in bed. The wife had been removed to the San Francisco Emergency Hospital. She had been raped, shot, and left for dead. The intruder had gone into the refrigerator, eaten their food, drew satanic symbols, the pentagram on the walls in the house. He vomited.
I'm gonna
after
go back
he
to my
ate their
old
food,
Photoshop version.
and then he masturbated.
Because this
on
new
their
one
carpet.
is doing extra
Very
stuff I don't
sick
like it doing.
crime scene,
I just want to
indicating a very disturbed mind.
delete the stuff around this gradient.
25-year-old Ramirez had begun worshipping Satan in his late teens and would often leave pentagrams at the scene of his crimes.
Now, that is not absolutely unique to Ramirez. There are lots of serial killers who engage in Satan worship, as did Ramirez.
The shocking graffiti was not enough to immediately point investigators towards
I was
Ramirez.
gonna say,
The unfortunate couple murdered in their San Francisco home
is there a way
were
to make this?
66-year-old Peter and
Just give me a
62-year-old
regular
Barbara
gradient,
Pan.
please.
Everything we found out about Barbara and Peter Pan, these were just
I
a
press
lovely
enter. Does that work?
older couple living a peaceful life, never expecting to be attacked while they were asleep in bed. Both my partner, we had seen an awful lot in our time on the police force, but we were both moved beyond normal for a homicide scene.
Frank began investigating the couple's murder, unaware that their death may
Okay, I
be
think that's how
linked
it
to
works.
California's most notorious serial killer.
That afternoon, after this initial crime scene visit,
that
my
works.
partner and I went back to the office and we put out an all points bulletin. This is an alert up and down the state of California regarding all the information that we had. And one of the key things that we had was that our victims were shot with a .22 revolver. And we had the slug for comparison. A very alert, active sergeant in the Glendale Police Department that was working the Valley Intruder case, a man by the name of John Perkins. John calls us and says you might want to check the Valley Intruder. He always uses a .22 caliber revolver. That connection there put us into the Los Angeles cases that particular day, August 18th, 1985.
After committing a murder outside the LA Valley region for the first time, the newspapers had renamed the killer the Night Stalker.
All of a sudden, the media blew this case up to be something very, very big, which it was. And now we had a link with Barbara and Peter Pan in San Francisco. So the murder count was going up every weekend. And people all over the state of California were very, very frightened.
Frank began looking into other recent crimes in the San Francisco Bay Area and found a burglary report filed by a fellow detective which had all the hallmarks of a Night Stalker break-in.
In that report, we found out that the intruder climbed through a bathroom window. They were not at home. Their young niece, I think she was 16 years old, she was home by herself. Hearing somebody come through the bathroom window, she panicked. She went downstairs and hid into a closet. Fortunately for this young lady, the intruder never found her, ransacked the house, stole a bunch of valuable jewelry.
Luckily, the homeowner had added his social security number to his wife's jewelry, just in case it was stolen. And before too long, 290 miles away, the police got a match.
The big break in the case came is when this bracelet with the serial number ends up in Lompoc, California, turned in by a confidential informant of a police sergeant on the Lompoc Police Department.
While Frank headed to Lompoc to interrogate the informant, Richard Ramirez had already left San Francisco and traveled 430 miles south to Mission Viejo. There he stole a car before carrying out another brutal attack on August the 24th, 1985. This time the victims were a young couple that were engaged to be married.
He attacked a man, shot him in the head. He was 30, he was living with his fiancée.
Ramirez raped the young woman, but she survived, and that would lead to the serial killer's undoing.
She gave the first really good description to the police of the man. But even more, and I think the telling fact, is that as he left, he said, "Tell them that you've met the Night Stalker."
Thanks to the social security number found on the bracelet, detectives in both Mission Viejo and San Francisco were now hot on the trail of the Night Stalker. Frank Falzon had tracked down a potential informant in Lompoc. Frank questioned him in the back of an unmarked car.
I said, your friend Rick is the Night Stalker, the man that's been killing in Los Angeles and killing in San Francisco. I don't want anybody to die this weekend. We need your help.
But the informant wasn't planning on giving up the name of the man who sold him the security tag bracelet.
So I'm not giving you nothing about my friend Rick. Do you understand me, you effing punk? I'm not giving you anything. And I could feel my blood beginning to boil. And I guess I rolled up my fist and I looked at him and he goes, "Oh, tough guy. You want to fight me?" And he put his hands up. And I started over the top. And at that point, I don't know if I would have finished that punch or not, but I was going to hit him with everything I had. And he fell back in the seat and he threw up his arms in a cross manner and he screamed, "Richard Ramirez." When we heard that name, I literally collapsed in the front seat of the police car.
At the same time as Frank got a positive ID, detectives investigating the attack in Mission Viejo had found a fingerprint. It was in the car the Night Stalker had stolen after it was found abandoned in Los Angeles. The print belonged to Richard Ramirez. Now linked to a carjacking and his likeness matched to the photo fit description given by a surviving victim, the net was closing in on Ramirez. On Friday, August the 30th, 1985, a mugshot on file from December 1984 was released to all media across California.
When a serial killer is moving around geographically, it's really important to enlist the aid of the media, which can get the word out, sketches and things like that, out to the public, because the public becomes an asset to you. And oftentimes, these cases are resolved by somebody recognizing the person.
The following morning, Saturday, August the 31st, 1985, Ramirez boarded a Greyhound bus in Tucson, Arizona, where he'd gone to visit his brother. He headed back to LA, unaware that he was a wanted man.
Saturday morning, Richard Ramirez's picture was front page in every newspaper in the state of California.
When he arrives back in Los Angeles, he gets off the Greyhound bus and somebody recognizes him from the picture that's been circulating in the press. And essentially, the predator now becomes the prey. Lots of people start chasing after him. And eventually, they catch up with him, and Richard Ramirez, the serial killer, is no more.
Not surprisingly, given the atmosphere in Los Angeles at the time, they attack him ferociously, kicking him, hitting him. But he's pinned down by the locals. He's not caught by two of LA's finest or even the police department. He's caught by a group of local onlookers. A true citizen's arrest, you might say.
As the local police arrived to break up the melee, it took a bit of time to realize who they had sitting in the back of their squad car.
This one cop looks real close. He's, Jesus, it's the Night Stalker. It's Richard Ramirez. He goes out over the air and announces they have the Night Stalker in custody.
After 14 months of fear, the residents of California could rest a little easier. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was off the streets and in police custody. Now began the task of gathering evidence against the 25-year-old who was going to plead not guilty to all the charges against him. Investigators would need to work tirelessly to get a conviction. The entire state of California wanted justice served upon Richard Ramirez. On August the 31st, 1985, the man known as the Night Stalker had been charged with 13 murders and 5 attempted murders in Los Angeles County between June 1984 and August 1985. His victims ranged in age between 16 and 83. 3 were men and 15 were women. Investigators were keen to interrogate the 25-year-old devil worshipper.
Normally, when I would interview somebody, I would try to empathize with them or get them to break down emotionally about their crimes and to confess or to, admit to some wrongdoing. With a psychopath, you're not going to get that. They don't have the ability to break down emotionally, and so you have to approach interviewing a psychopath like Ramirez much differently. You have to play his game, stroke his ego, almost compliment him on his individuality and what he was able to get away with.
But despite all their efforts, detectives were getting nowhere.
Ramirez was a narcissist who believed he was omnipotent. He believed that he could fool detectives that had been, specially trained. And he believed that his ability to fool them was not simply a product of his own genius, but a product of the fact that he was aligned with, acting in conspiracy with Satan himself.
Ramirez went to trial for the murders he was known to have committed in the Los Angeles area. He was not charged for the murders he was suspected of in and around San Francisco. At a preliminary hearing on October the 24th, 1985, Ramirez pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him, and it caused an uproar in the courtroom.
On the first day he entered and held up his hand, he had a pentagram written on his hand. And he shouted out at the top of his voice, "Hail Satan." His position as Lucifer's assistant was now to be glorified in front of the world's media, and particularly the American media. He was a celebrity on the same level as Manson. He was good looking and was very aware of it, very aware of his female admirers in the court and outside, very aware that he cut a rather dramatic figure.
You can see that the courtroom is essentially a stage for him. So he wears dark sunglasses, he dresses all in black. He is this kind of pseudo-celebrity, and he really is enjoying it. He's lapping up the attention. So this is somebody who has attained a kind of celebrity status because of the awful things that he's done.
Due to the amount of work for both the prosecution and the defense, the trial did not begin until 3 years after the arrest of Ramirez. It took place in July 1988 in the LA Superior Court.
Right now I'm saving, backing up files.
The prosecution had uncovered
We'll go for another
stolen
hour or
goods
two.
from many of the crime scenes that were in the possession of Ramirez at the time of his arrest. Ballistic reports had also linked the murders to the same gun belonging to Ramirez. The defense argued that all the evidence was circumstantial. There was a solid case against the killer, but nonetheless, for some of the families, the prospect of attending the trial was just too much to bear.
I was offered to go to the trial, but I didn't want to go because I didn't give a rat's ass about him. All I cared about was my dad and Maxine. And besides, I would have done something crazy because I was pretty upset. I'd have been in there for 1 minute, I'd have been arrested myself because I would have gone off. There's no way I could have done it. There's no possible way. In fact, I don't even know how people do it, to tell you the truth. I don't. Why would you want to do it? Why would you want to look at some scumbag who did something like that?
After the death of one of the jurors, the trial was halted and delayed even further. It wasn't until September 1989 that the jury had reached a verdict. But Ramirez seemed completely unflustered right up to the end.
A lot of his time at the trial was spent engaging in what I call bravado behavior. The message that he sent out throughout the course of the trial is that there's really nothing you can do to me. I'll let you have your trial. It'll have its outcome. Nothing will be changed because I will soon merge with Satan.
On September the 20th, 1989, 29-year-old Richard Ramirez was found guilty of all 43 charges against him, including 13 murders and 5 attempted murders. At a hearing on November the 7th, he was sentenced to death and sent to San Quentin Prison, California. Showing complete contempt for his victims' families, he responded by saying, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." Ramirez would never face trial for the attack in Mission Viejo or the San Francisco murders, although Frank Falzon did at least get to officially charge him.
He was brought to San Quentin, and the district attorney's office in San Francisco asked if we could bring him over, charge him formally on the murders of Peter and Barbara Pan. He was transported to San Francisco, our county jail. I went upstairs, I met Richard Ramirez, we booked him on 2 murder counts. After he was booked, he was being led away to a holding cell. And I'll never forget that sick look in his face. He turned around, he looked at me, and he had that smile on his face that he always gave before he lifted up his hand and showed the pentagram symbol.
Ramirez will never face trial for the murders he was thought to have committed in the San Francisco Bay Area. It was a tactical decision. Prosecutors decided they did not want to do anything that might jeopardize the death penalty case they had already successfully made against him. Despite his heinous acts, Ramirez had acquired a cult-like status. He had many adoring female fans write to him throughout his trial and during his incarceration.
Ramirez became a celebrity in his own right, and he had groupies. He had marriage proposals. He had women that wanted to come and visit him at the prison.
Why
One woman in particular, Doreen Loy, wrote Ramirez 75 letters from 1985 through his trial. And in 1988, he proposed to her. They married in San Quentin, where he was incarcerated, in 1996.
That's crazy.
On June the 7th, 2013, Richard Ramirez died before he could face the death penalty for his crimes.
How he died?
Instead, he died of complications relating to B-cell lymphoma. He was 53 years old. Ramirez had spent 23 years on death row after taking the lives of 13 people.
He was a truly depraved individual who had no interest or concern for anyone in his path, and they were simply fodder for his great and aggravated ego. I have and can never have anything but the greatest sympathy for them.
Just took away really everything. Everything that was important to us and our family and all that, really. Every holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's just pain, it's just a stab in the heart for me. There's no way that ever since that happened, haven't had a Thanksgiving or a Christmas since. So that's what kind of impact we're talking about.
What do I think of Richard Ramirez? Not much. This man was a loser. Society, it was our loss that he was ever born. His death probably gave relief to so many of his surviving family members and victims that he had murdered. His death, I don't believe, was mourned by anybody except other satanic worshipers. This was a very sick person.
In a terrifying murder spree, Richard Ramirez broke into the sanctuary of people's homes and savagely took their lives for his own selfish needs. Although officially responsible for 13 murders in Los Angeles, he is likely to have claimed many more victims across California. He was a psychopathic, satanic, sexual predator who will always be remembered as one of the world's most evil killers. Shortly before midnight on July the 22nd, 1991, 2 Milwaukee police officers were flagged down in their patrol car by a man with a pair of handcuffs dangling from one wrist. The police had no idea that this bizarre encounter would lead to the arrest of one of the most prolific serial killers in U.S. history.
That night, people were afraid. People were whispering under their breaths. You know, it was the devil. It's the devil.
The man had escaped from a small one-bedroom apartment on North 25th Street. When the officers went to investigate, they found themselves in a living nightmare.
They saw the body parts, and then one of the officers said he heard a scream. Then he realized later he was the one who screamed when he saw the body.
Without detection, 31-year-old Jeffrey Dahmer had killed 17 young men across a 13-year period.
He hasn't got the same level of repulsion and shock at dead bodies or mutilated bodies that most of us have. It was just another aspect of his life.
Jeffrey Dahmer had etched his name in history as one of the world's most evil killers.
Crazy.
The name Jeffrey Dahmer has become synonymous with evil. Between 1978 and 1991, he killed 17 young men and boys by drugging them before strangling them to death. As the revelations of the murders came to light, it was the behavior of Dahmer once he'd killed his victims that really stunned the world, with stories of necrophilia and cannibalism. The first journalist to arrive at the crime scene was Annie Schwartz.
It wasn't a gory crime scene. It was really quite antiseptic. It was a very simple one bedroom with a kitchen and a living room, and it looked like a regular single guy lived there. There's some dishes in the sink, but by and large, this was not some chamber of horrors like people, will describe it. Certainly not at first look. Once detectives and officers started searching further, that's when they found out the actual horror was in that apartment.
The story of this macabre killer begins 30 years before his arrest. Jeffrey Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May the 21st, 1960. The family moved to Iowa before settling in Ohio in 1966.
He lived with these parents who were constantly, as he put it, at each other's throats. His mother appeared to have been, this raging bundle of neurotic behavior. The parents were constantly fighting and screaming. And, Dahmer himself, evidently, throughout much of his early life, was completely ignored by both of them. Were so caught up in their own psychological turmoil.
Jeffrey Dahmer never really made close social links with any of his peers. He was a little bit odd. And if you speak to his school friends at the time, he didn't seem to have a lot of empathy for other children. So when children would fall over in the playground or get hurt or cry, he didn't appear to be affected by that and would sometimes laugh at them. So something wasn't quite right with a young Jeffrey Dahmer.
Feeling ostracized by his family and classmates, Dahmer spent a lot of time playing alone in the woods surrounding his Ohio home.
Well, he had a really morbid curiosity with death from quite a young age, and this started with a fairly innocent insect collection, and he would keep the bodies of insects inside jars full of chemicals. This soon progressed. He would go fishing, and he was interested in what the fish looked like on the inside, so he would chop up the fish to have a look at this.
Dahmer took his fish and cut it open. He was fascinated with the inside of the fish. And one of his little friends asked him, "Jeffrey, what are you doing?" And he said, "Just look at it."
And this, escalates, to the point that it's, he's apparently killing stray dogs and, decapitating them.
One of the young boys in the neighborhood was walking in the woods behind Dahmer's house when Dahmer was a teenager, and he came across the body of a dead dog, and it was mutilated and it was nailed to a tree.
So there's some early interest in animal anatomy that blossoms into this very, very dark obsession, and then somehow becomes tangled up with his own sexuality.
Dahmer continued to struggle to fit in at high school and turned to alcohol from a young age.
Well, Dahmer started drinking when he was at school. One of his former classmates remembered that he used to come in with a cup, and he didn't have tea or coffee in this cup. He had Scotch whiskey in it. So this was quite a disturbing behavior for a teenager.
There's a thought that, in hindsight, you ask why more people didn't try to intervene. You've got a kid coming drunk to school. But back in the 70s, when Dahmer's coming to school intoxicated, nobody thinks, gee, we better make sure we take care of this, because what if he turns out to be a serial killer?
In the summer of 1978, Dahmer's parents finally divorced.
The breakdown of Jeffrey Dahmer's parents' marriage was quite a tough time for him. His parents were at each other's throats. It was not an amicable divorce at all, and each of them was forcing him to side with them. So he felt very much torn between his parents. So this was a real source of conflict for him. And I think at this time, children often who have these experiences will retreat into themselves. They will preoccupy themselves with things that they're interested in and will lose themselves in their own fantasy world. And I think that's very much what happened with Dahmer.
Having just recently graduated from high school, Dahmer soon had no one around him at all.
Well, in 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer was 18. His mother had gone away with his younger brother, and his father was living in a hotel. So he's alone, and he's ruminating, and he's fantasizing, and things are going to take a turn for the worse quite soon after this.
On June the 18th, 1978, Dahmer's fantasy world collided with the real one when he pulled over to pick up a 19-year-old hitchhiker called Stephen Hicks.
Dahmer picked him up and, invited him back to his house to have some drinks and I guess maybe smoke some dope.
They were in the basement of his parents' home. They had had sex. And then Stephen Hicks wanted to leave. And that was when Dahmer just wanted so badly to have company. It sounds like such a textbook psychological thing, abandonment syndrome, but this was at the heart of what made him so needy for company.
And then when the guy said he wanted to leave, Dahmer clubbed him on the back of the head with a barbell and then strangled him, then ultimately disposed of the body, removed all the flesh, and eventually dissolved it in acid and pulverized the bones with a sledgehammer.
This is a really, really brutal crime. And he disposes of the body parts in the woods behind his house. And that's a really symbolic place for Jeffrey Dahmer, because this is a place where he's dismembered animals before, where he's displayed mutilated dogs on tree trunks. So we're seeing that this place is special to him.
Dahmer had experienced taking the life of another human for the first time.
I think that the first murder is a real milestone for Jeffrey Dahmer. So he knows now that he's capable of this. He knows that he's capable of taking someone else's life. So it's not just a fantasy anymore. It's now a reality. He's gone from harming animals to harming people, and he's not going to stop.
He's not desperate, but he becomes accustomed to it. He becomes ready to kill again, and just to kill and kill and kill and kill until he gets caught.
But it wasn't until 13 years later, in August 1991, that Dahmer was finally apprehended after one of his potential victims escaped from his Milwaukee apartment. Once in custody, Dahmer confessed to killing 17 young men and boys. The man whose job it was to prosecute the relentless killer was Milwaukee District Attorney Mike McCann.
The word evil doesn't come up very often. It just doesn't. Guilty, not guilty. Did he do it, didn't he do it? Culpability, yes. But not often evil, because evil is almost a moral issue. That word came up with Dahmer.
That's crazy.
You couldn't help see what he did. Innocent people, strangers, to take for a couple of hours of sex, to take a human being's life. That's so evil, so evil.
Dahmer's case made headlines across the world after the details of his grisly confession were leaked.
A New York Times reporter compromised the integrity of a worker at our building and got a copy of the confession. It was a detailed 38-page confession, so the details of the gory things he had done, again, captured people's interest. So that's how it rapidly became a matter of intense interest.
The confession outlined the life of a deranged serial killer. After murdering Stephen Hicks and desecrating his body in 1978,
I might
Dahmer
do some
didn't kill
more
again
work
for
off
9
stream,
years.
but good finish up there.
After
We're almost
dropping
done.
out of Ohio State University after just one semester, he was spending most of his days drinking until his father urged him to enlist in the US Army.
The alcohol continued as a theme when he joined the army and he moved to Germany. One of his former colleagues remembers him just sitting in his room drinking gin all day long, not even leaving his room to eat. So there was a real dependency on alcohol.
In 1981, 21-year-old Dahmer was discharged from the army after his drinking rendered him incapable of serving. After spending a month sleeping rough on the beaches of Florida, he returned to Ohio. But his father had had enough and shipped him off to start a new life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
He was sent to live with his grandmother, who was the one adult apparently he had, something approaching, a normal affection for. I was there. He really embarked on this career of horror.
By 1986, Dahmer had been arrested a couple of times for exposing himself in public, once in front of a group of children. The hopeless alcoholic had managed to find work at a local chocolate factory in Milwaukee and was frequenting gay bars and bathhouses.
I think being homosexual affected Dahmer in two ways. Firstly, it was a source of shame for him because it was quite a stigmatized social identity at the time. But also, it enabled him an opportunity when it came to his killing behavior. So Being homosexual at this time, it was something that happened in the shadows, it was something that happened underground, and this was the ideal place for someone like him to go hunting.
It was this exposure to the gay scene that seemed to reawaken the dark sexual urges inside of him. And by September 1987, over 9 years since the murder of Stephen Hicks, Jeffrey Dahmer was ready to kill again.
His idea was to drug people and keep them with him so that they wouldn't answer back to him, they wouldn't argue with him, they wouldn't fight him, they would stay with him. That's what he wanted. He wanted companionship. So he would go to the bars on Milwaukee's near South Side, and he would have conversations with people in these bars. And when he was talking to these people, these prospective victims, he would say, "So what was it like when you came out? How was your family about it?" So if your response was, "Oh, my family has been great, they're so supportive, I'm very close to my parents," that person wasn't going to be a victim. But if the person answered, "My parents aren't speaking to me anymore, I'm estranged from my family, I'm kind of on my own now," that was the perfect victim for Jeffrey Dahmer because he wanted to choose people who wouldn't be missed.
That is crazy.
Between September 1987 and March 1988, Dahmer killed 3 men. The youngest, a 14-year-old boy, who he paid to pose for nude photographs before drugging and strangling him to death. He would dissolve the bodies in acid.
He cleverly developed a program to destroy the bodies, get rid of the bodies, left no evidence. This was a very clever killer, very clever killer.
Dahmer would dissolve his victims, presumably to make it easier to dispose of them. Dissolving tissue and chemicals can certainly interfere with identifying it as human tissue. It'll interfere with DNA. You're really left predominantly with skeletal remains to try and identify features such as age, sex, race.
Dahmer murdered 2 of the victims at his grandmother's house where he was living.
His grandmother became aware that he was bringing these young guys back to her house. I mean, she thought for gay sex. Obviously, she had no inkling of the atrocities he was committing on their bodies, although she was complaining also about a foul odor that she noticed.
On September the 25th, 1988, Dahmer moved into his own apartment on North 25th Street in Milwaukee and didn't wait long before attacking again. The very next day, September the 26th, he enticed a 13-year-old boy back to his home and drugged him.
One of the methods that Dahmer used to subdue his victims was to use benzodiazepines, the same family of drugs as Valium. He'd put them in drinks. That would make you woozy, sleepy, and then eventually go unconscious.
Dahmer sexually assaulted the boy, but somehow, possibly due to Dahmer passing out drunk, the 13-year-old escaped and went to the police. In January 1989, he was convicted of sexual assault, but the sentencing was delayed until May, during which time an unrelenting Dahmer, unbeknownst to the authorities, managed to claim a 5th victim. The 29-year-old served 10 months in prison, but when he was released in March 1990, he picked up right where he left off.
So Jeffrey Dahmer really did ramp up his
crazy.
offending. The scale and the nature of his behaviour became all the more grotesque. So he wasn't just killing people, dismembering them, and then disposing of their bodies. He started to do some really bizarre things.
He was in the process of constructing some hideously diabolical shrine in his bedroom out of the skulls and skeletons of some of his victims. It's almost as though some bizarre, archaic thing had broken through and he was performing or creating some sort of ancient, human sacrificial temple in this little Milwaukee apartment.
In 1990, Dahmer killed another 4 young men. His MO was becoming more and more polished.
He would offer his victims money to go back to his apartment with him to take pictures, nude photographs of them, and then perhaps to have sex. Every single one of his victims went with him willingly. He would offer them a drink, and once he found out what they wanted to drink, he kept a lot of things on hand, different kinds of alcohol, and that's when he would put a drug in it that would put them to sleep, or that would relax them so that they would pass out.
They would pass out. He would then have sex with them while they were passed out, do with them as he wished, but of course they couldn't do to him. Then as they approached recovery, coming out of it, he would strangle them to death.
It seemed as though Dahmer got a thrill, not from the murder, but from the dead bodies of his victims.
Dahmer liked necrophilia. He liked sex with unconscious people. He wasn't a slasher in the sense that he took delight in killing. His purpose was sex with these people, company with these people. That's hard to believe.
He would commit necrophiliac sex acts on the corpses, dismember the corpses, dissolve parts of the bodies in these vats of acid he had, keep certain organs in his refrigerator, some of which he would actually cannibalize.
Dahmer said that the cannibalism that he engaged in was born out of a curiosity. He wanted to find out, first of all, what that would be like. He also said that there was an element of wanting to make these people a part of him, so they would be with him forever.
Dahmer, from the beginning, was driven by this terror of being alone. He said he killed his first victim, Stephen Hicks, when Hicks said he had to go, and Dahmer didn't want to be alone. There's some desire, which is part of normal sexuality. You love somebody, somebody will say, oh, I love you so much, I want to eat you up. With normal people, that's obviously metaphorical, but it does express some desire to be so close to the person that you want to incorporate them into, you want to merge with them. With somebody like Dahmer, that becomes this very literal horror.
And the horror only became worse when Dahmer began experimenting with his semi-conscious victims.
He would drill holes in their skulls and put muriatic acid inside to see if he could get them to a zombie state so that he could keep them alive and subservient to him.
It's essentially an amateur version of attempting to perform a lobectomy or a lobotomy, but it would be an incredibly unpleasant and damaging thing to do to someone's brain. If you affect the frontal lobes, you will affect personality, potentially make somebody docile. If he's less accurate, you could essentially cause a stroke that could cause paralysis, speech problems. It really very much depends on which part of the brain is actually damaged.
But, of course, that didn't work, and his victims died one after another. Hearing about that is the stuff of horror movies. And the fact that it was happening in a city where we were known for manufacturing and beer and a very good Midwestern work ethic, tight families, this isn't the kind of thing that happens here.
In May 1991, 31-year-old Jeffrey Dahmer was in his killing prime. He'd already murdered 11 men and had begun collecting bones and skulls from his victims and cannibalizing their organs. What would have been a nightmare for most was a fantasy for him, and he carefully went about his killings under the radar of the police and the people of Milwaukee.
Jeffrey Dahmer had a job in a local chocolate factory, and I think for him it enabled him to maintain a facade of normality. He was just an average Joe, a regular guy who went to work every day.
I think he killed so many people without being caught because of the fact that he looked like everyone else. He did what successful serial killers do. He blended. They blend in with society. Now, he was a Caucasian male living in a predominantly African-American neighborhood, but he didn't talk to anybody. He didn't bother anybody. He was barely someone people noticed. Barely noticed. He also was targeting people who, he found out, might not be missed.
For most people, if they were to commit the type of acts that Jeffrey Dahmer did, they would no way be able to function normally. But Jeffrey Dahmer was not most people. He hasn't got the same level of repulsion and shock at dead bodies or mutilated bodies that most of us have. It was just another aspect of his life.
It was not known that we had a serial slayer loose in our city. We did not know because he was so cleverly disposing of the bodies. The families were reporting the sons were missing, but the police were not finding bodies. And not infrequently, young men, something happens in their life, they just up and leave town. That happens enough that the police don't get worried. If it's a woman, they'll immediately commit resources to investigate, but young men, they don't.
But on May the 26th, 1991, Dahmer came agonizingly close to capture after an encounter with a 14-year-old boy.
Dahmer had taken Konarak Synthesymphone, a young Asian male who he found attractive. He met him in the mall, offered him money to go back to his apartment. He went, and he began to work the ritual. Dahmer would drug him, and then he began the process of this crude lobotomy, and he had drilled a hole in this young man's head. He took a break. He ran out to get more beer. While he was gone, Konarak ran out of the apartment. He was naked, he was completely dazed, and he was running up the alley next to Dahmer's apartment building. A woman in another apartment building saw
remember that from the
him
Netflix
running
series.
up the alley and said, "There's a boy running up the alley, something's going on," and then these women called the police.
And then Dahmer appeared, and again, this is another remarkable characteristic of these psychopaths, is that they have an ability to maintain, a kind of coolness under the most extraordinarily high-pressured circumstances.
So he walked up to the officers. "Good evening, officers." He's very polite, he's sober, and he said, "This is my boyfriend. He came to stay with me. We had a little bit too much to drink, and he ran out of the house." He said, "How old is he?" Dahmer said, "He's 19. And the officers said, "Okay, well, just to make sure, let's all walk back up to the apartment together."
The cops went in and looked around. They even peeked into the bedroom where there was a decomposing corpse of one of Dahmer's previous victims, but, they took such a cursory look at it that they didn't even notice it.
Assuming the couple were having a lover's tip.
From all the true crime documentaries I watch, every time when a cop smells a dead body or decomposing flesh, they say they know that smell, they never forget it. How were these guys not picking up on that smell? Just saying.
If the two police officers left...
Every documentary the cop says they recognize that smell and they know what it is. They say that the smell of a decomposing body has a unique smell that they know. And according to some podcasts like Raw Mango, like a sweet, pungent smell, like maple syrup or something. I don't know. It's weird. Anyways, interesting.
Konarak alone with Dahmer in the apartment building. And in the early hours of the morning, he murdered the 14-year-old boy. An opportunity to catch the killer had been missed.
I think that really speaks volumes about the attitudes of the police at the time in terms of ethnic minorities, in terms of young people, in terms of the gay community, and that was another victim that could potentially have been saved. So there's this terrible thing going on behind closed doors and people just aren't seeing it. People aren't wanting to see it. Even the police are not joining up the dots and finding out what's really going on. So this is allowed to just bubble away and get worse.
After evading capture, Dahmer was free to continue.
There was two sides, really, to Dahmer's pleasure that he got from killing his victims. So he was a sadist who enjoys the pain and suffering of other people. And with sadists, that thrill ends when the victim dies. But Dahmer was also something of a necrophiliac who was interested in having corpses around and doing things with those corpses. And that means that the thrill starts with death. So he has this continuous fulfillment going on. And he's always fully in control. And I think that's what's really at the root of Jeffrey Dahmer. It's power and it's control, and it's the feeling that he has all this knowledge about what he's done and nobody else quite knows what he's up to.
By July 1991, Dahmer's desire to kill had become insatiable. In just 16 days, he murdered 4 more men, bringing his total number of victims to 17. But Dahmer's reign of terror was about to come to an end. On July the 22nd, he met a man called Tracy Edwards.
While they were together in the apartment, Dahmer threw a handcuff on him. This was now the beginning of his ritual. Dahmer had taken photographs of his victims in various stages of dismemberment, Polaroids. And those were sitting on the dresser inside the bedroom. They weren't sitting out in the main living room, but there was some speculation that Tracy Edwards had perhaps seen that. And he ran out of the apartment in his underwear, ran down the street, and when he saw the police car, Tracy Edwards has said his intention was just to get the handcuff off. That's all he wanted. He stopped these cops to say, hey, can you just get this off of me? So he stopped, and the officers start talking to him about what he saw, and then they said, well, we should probably check this out. Let's all go back to the apartment. Dahmer answered, and the minute he saw that it was the police, he tried to shut the door on them. The police pushed the door open a bit. They started struggling with him, and then finally, he just gave in. And that was when Dahmer was officially finished. He was finished killing, and he knew that he was finished.
The police officers immediately arrested Dahmer after finding the remains of some of his victims in his apartment.
They saw the body parts, and then one of the officers said he heard a scream. Then he realized later he was the one who screamed when he saw the body. So they knew they were dealing with a very serious offense. Dahmer did not resist, a little slight resistance, but Dahmer was taken into custody, and the investigation was initiated.
What followed was an incredible media circus on Dahmer's doorstep, as unbelievable stories about what was being uncovered inside his apartment were revealed.
It was so fantastical that you think people are making it up when they're telling you the details. But as it turned out, they weren't making it up. All of the atrocities that we heard about that had happened in that apartment really did happen.
The medical examiner who was called to the scene didn't know what was happening. It was so strange. There was a freezer there, bodies, parts in the freezer, called in a hazmat crew. Well, our television stations cover the police radio. When they hear that, they dispatch crews there. The first day was local television, second day, national television. By the third day, it was international television.
They were able to show video of these items coming out of the front door of this apartment building that's not usual at a crime scene. We saw a large blue barrel in which we know that Jeffrey Dahmer was trying to dissolve body parts. They had a refrigerator that was holding skulls and also was holding body parts. So these were coming down the stairs, and people were just incredulous to watch it. When I wrote the story for the Milwaukee Journal that morning, and it was released in the paper about 8 o'clock, I think, in the morning. Normally we were an afternoon paper, but we went out early with it because it was such an incredible story.
But no one quite knew the enormity of the crimes until Dahmer confessed to detectives at the local police station.
When I've spoken to the detectives that were working this case, they have said this was not a great whodunit. This would have been a whodunit if Jeffrey Dahmer hadn't confessed to everything.
When Dahmer was arrested, there were already a number of bodies in his quarters. He gave full confessions to the police, detailing his involvement in 16 separate slayings. Most of the time, he did not know the name of the victims.
When Dahmer remembered a crime that he might not have shared with the detectives, he would have the jail call them, whether it was the middle of the night or the middle of the day, and say, I remembered something else, please come over. Dahmer had said he wanted to make sure that he didn't forget anything because he wanted those families to have closure. I'm not sure about that. That may be giving Jeffrey Dahmer more credit than he is deserved, but he did claim to want to try and remember so that all of those families would have closure.
One of the interesting things about Dahmer that does differentiate him from other killers of his breed is that he did seem to be capable of a certain degree of remorse and certainly recognized the extent of his depravity.
Although he confessed to killing 16 people in the state of Wisconsin, Dahmer was first charged with 4 counts of murder on the 25th of July 1991, and a further 11 counts were added in August. The following month, investigators in Ohio found teeth and bone fragments belonging to Stephen Hicks in the woods near Dahmer's family home. A preliminary hearing was set for January 1992, His legal team are going to argue that the killings were the work of a madman.
The issue wasn't going to be, did he do it or not? The issue was going to be, was he sane or insane when he did it? And his hope was that at least in even one of the cases, he could induce the jury to believe that he was insane. Under those circumstances, he would be sentenced not to a prison, but to a mental health facility. People would say to me, Mike, this guy killed 16 people. He was drinking their blood, eating parts of their body. He must have been crazy. It sounds like he's crazy to say that, but that's not what the insanity rule is.
The city wanted justice. They wanted to see the man the press were calling the Milwaukee Cannibal locked away in prison for the horrific crimes he had committed. The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer would be one of the biggest in the history of not just Wisconsin, but the entire USA.
My reaction to it then was the same reaction I think that everybody who lived in Milwaukee had when they heard about the case. No, it can't be. This is Milwaukee. Those kinds of things don't happen here. This is the Midwest. This is a very nice place.
The trial of Jeffrey Dahmer began on the 30th of January 1992. Anne had a front row seat.
The courtroom was an odd spectacle because court TV was still new in the game back then. And the idea that you would come to court and you'd be on television was still kind of new to people. It was the kind of media attention to a trial that Milwaukee hadn't seen in a very, very long time, if ever. I can remember so clearly the first time Jeffrey Dahmer's initial appearance in court, when he walked in. I think the real fear that people had when they first saw Jeffrey Dahmer was that he looked like everybody else. He was a good-looking young man, and he is not the person that you would look at and say, stay away from that guy.
It would be up to Milwaukee DA Mike McCann to attempt to prove that Dahmer was sane and responsible for his actions.
Guilty wasn't going to be an issue, but we wanted the jury to know enough about the facts, and so did the defense, to say, all right, what really happened here? How atrocious was it? How planned was it? How was he behaving? What skills were involved? He couldn't control himself.
It was a lot to take in because the testimony was so graphic. We all knew Mike McCann. He was a religious man, and we've seen him in court. He was a good attorney. But the kinds of things that he was reciting out of the criminal complaint and the confession were unheard of. These things were unheard of, and they happened right here in our city.
He did it quietly. He concealed the bodies, cleverly concealed, destroyed the bodies, planned it well, laid in the equipment, got the drugs that he used. No one that he worked with thought he was insane. The way he conducted himself was in a way that it seemed that he was sane, and that's what we wanted to get across to the jury.
Mike employed the help of psychiatry expert Dr. Philip Resnick.
The more bizarre the crimes, such as involving cannibalism, the more the lay public wants to think that guy had to be out of his mind. But in looking at it from the actual strict definition of insanity, generally the diseases of paraphilias, like necrophilia, where someone has trouble controlling themselves, are not viewed, for the most part, as diseases which qualify for insanity because of the social implications. One of the points that I made as a consultant is, even if you have necrophilia, and even if you have trouble controlling your impulse, the majority of necrophiliacs will select a setting where they can accomplish this without homicide. So some become assistants in morgues or assistants in pathology labs where they may have access to dead victims. Others will actually disinter bodies after they're buried so that one does not have to actually kill to exercise the necrophilia's impulse, and that's one of the reasons I felt that he didn't qualify for insanity.
The trial was essentially a debate between specialist psychiatrists about the mental state of Dahmer, who sat watching the whole thing play out over 2 weeks.
Dahmer was very calm in court. When you talk, are you assessing a person by what you see? No one studying him would believe he was insane. He was he was watching what was going on. He wasn't reacting in any negative way. He conducted himself in a very rational way, a very proper way.
This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick.
On February 15th, the jury had reached a verdict on Dahmer's sanity.
Someone like Dahmer comes along who has never been in a psychiatric hospital and alleges insanity. Juries are going to be skeptical of it, and then when it's all in the form of his sexual drive rather than a traditional psychosis where someone's out of touch with reality and he's taking careful steps to cover his tracks, it's very difficult to succeed with insanity with that type of case.
Jeffrey Dahmer was ruled to be sane by the jury. On February 17th, 1992, Judge Lawrence Graham sentenced him to life imprisonment for each of the 15 counts against him.
When the verdict was announced in court, there was a great shout from the gallery, especially from the victims' families that cried.
I was pleased in the sense, happy, not exuberant, but happy that this danger was removed from our community, that the jury had not been hoodwinked, that the jury realized this chap was not insane.
The state of Wisconsin does not have the death penalty, but Dahmer would have to serve a minimum of 936 years. He was immediately sent to the Columbia Correctional Institute in Portage. 3 months later, on the 1st of May 1992 in Ohio, Dahmer was also found guilty of murdering Stephen Hicks in 1978 and given yet another life sentence.
Dahmer always said that he was compelled to kill, that they were urges. He said, I had urges that I could not control. He also said that even though he was in prison, he was relieved that the killing was done. He still had the urges. They didn't go away. He was just in a place where he couldn't act on them.
Locked away for the rest of his life, Dahmer found comfort in the Bible. And by 1994, he decided to get baptized. The prison called on local minister Roy Ratcliffe.
So I was quite surprised to be escorted to a little room and left alone. And then Jeff comes to the room and he closes the door, and then there's he and I sitting together across the table. And I'm thinking for a moment, wow, I'm in a room with a man who's killed several people. So yeah, that was a little bit disconcerting. But I was there for a purpose and for a reason, so I wanted to find out what was going on and to see what I could do to help. So my fears were set aside primarily because of my focus on what I was trying to do. Jeff was a normal guy, courteous, very respectful to me. When we shook hands, I noticed his hands were rather small. Looking at his hands and thinking, wow, these are the hands that strangled people, these are the hands that murdered people, these are the hands that dismembered people.
On May the 10th, 1994, the same day that notorious serial killer John Wayne Gacy was executed, Jeffrey Dahmer was baptized in a prison bathtub.
Then the door opens and I walk into the room, and Jeff had already crawled into the tub, and the only thing that was above the water was just simply his head. And so I baptized you in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit for the forgiveness of your sins, and pushed his head down under. And then when he came back up, I said something I often say to people when I baptize them. I said, welcome to the family of God. He said, well, thank you very much.
But just 6 months after his baptism on November the 28th, 1994, Dahmer and another convicted murderer, Jesse Anderson, were attacked and killed by a fellow inmate.
Christopher Scarver took a barbell, went into the bathroom, and beat both Jeffrey Dahmer and Jesse Anderson to death. There were a number of people who felt that Jeffrey Dahmer got exactly what he deserved. When I called his mother, she said, well, now everybody got what they want. The monster is dead. And then she said, he was my son. He was my boy.
It was a terrible, terrible death in that sense there. But for some people, it was a relief. They were glad because all they could think about are the crimes he committed. They're not thinking about what I'm thinking about is here's a person who's trying to serve God as best as he can, and now his life is being taken from him.
I mean, some people see some sort of poetic symmetry in the fact that Dahmer's first murder was the one in which he bludgeoned the teenage hitchhiker Stephen Hicks to death with a barbell, and that he himself died in a very, very similar way.
The apartment on North 25th Street that housed Dahmer's macabre collection of victims' remains and where 12 young men lost their lives was demolished in November 1992. But Dahmer's twisted legacy has been impossible to wipe out. He has become one of the most infamous serial killers in the world.
I think of Dahmer as sort of like the flip side of somebody like Mozart. How do you account for somebody creating that kind of music? Ultimately, how do you account for somebody who is luring young men to his apartment and drilling holes in their skull and injecting brains with muriatic acid to turn them into zombies? There's something there ultimately inexplicable.
Jeffrey Dahmer committed some of the most evil acts that I have ever written about or heard about or seen on a television show, because they were real. I don't know if he was sane or insane, because that's not my training to figure that out. But I can absolutely say that he did some of the most evil acts known to man.
Dahmer's crimes would not feel out of place in a perverse horror movie. He was a man who killed to satisfy his unhealthy sexual perversions, keeping parts of his victims' skeletons as trophies and eating their organs. Jeffrey Dahmer truly is the stuff of nightmares, and unquestionably one of the world's most evil killers.
But you can't feel any empathy of all the people that you killed.
I don't have any remorse.
It was the biggest tragedy that I have ever witnessed in my life.
That's not usual at a crime scene.
You see a lot, and it has to have an effect on you.
Police were baffled. They had no idea who was doing this, how it was happening.
I lost my temper, and that took the life of my son.
I do deserve to be executed. Bottom line, I ain't gonna candy coat it.
On the 21st of December 1978, police in Chicago were desperately trying to locate a missing teenager and had begun searching the home of a local maintenance contractor.
When they executed that search warrant, they went in the crawl space, and the very first shovel that they dug, they found human remains.
The man they had in custody, 36-year-old John Wayne Gacy, was a popular socialite who spent his weekends dressed as a clown, entertaining children.
At one point, chillingly, he said to the detectives, you know, clowns can get away with murder. Well, never was a truer word said.
In total, Gacy, the killer clown, had tortured and killed 33 young men over a 5-year period. 27 of the bodies were buried right beneath his own home.
Using other human beings, inflicting pain and suffering and torture on another helpless human being, to me is the essence of evil.
The remorseless John Wayne Gacy had proved himself to be one of the world's most evil killers. Over the course of 6 years, John Wayne Gacy kidnapped, tortured, and brutally murdered 33 young men and boys in and around Chicago, Illinois. It was one of the most shocking sets of crimes in American history. The bodies of 27 of Gacy's victims were buried directly below the house he lived in. But this killer's story starts almost 40 years before. John Wayne Gacy was born in Chicago, Illinois on the 17th of March 1942. The second of 3 children, Gacy had a difficult upbringing. His father was an alcoholic who was reportedly both mentally and physically abusive to his children and their mother.
His father spent apparently all of Gacy's childhood demeaning him and physically punishing him and telling him how stupid and worthless and effeminate he was.
Gacy's childhood friend Barry Buscelli remembers the physical abuse he suffered at the hands of his father.
If Johnny was 2 minutes late, no food. So a lot of times Johnny ate at our house and stayed at our house overnight. He used to take Johnny when he was sitting at the kitchen table, and he would take his fist and hit Johnny in the face.
The father is a very significant figure in the genesis of Gacy's terrible deeds. For, to my mind, Gacy was always trying to satisfy his father, whom he never could. He was beaten repeatedly by his father, with belts, with brooms. At one stage he was knocked out by him.
These people grow up with such a malignant view of the world and of human relationships, and feeling that human relationships are not based on love and trust and respect, that they're all based on exploitation and cruelty and inflicting pain.
Gacy was a sickly child. He suffered from a heart condition, limiting his involvement in sports activities and consequently alienating him from his peers. Aged 11, an accident in a playground led to his teenage years being blighted by blackouts and hospital visits.
At that time, the swings were wooden base swings with heavy chains coming down. Johnny went to grab it, and the swing clipped him right across the forehead and knocked him to the ground.
By 1966, 24-year-old Gacy was married and had relocated to the city of Waterloo, 300 miles west of Chicago, in the neighboring state of Iowa.
Well, Gacy got married and life from the outside appeared to be relatively normal. He had quite a good job. His wife had 2 children. So they appeared to be the typical cereal box American nuclear family. And Gacy wasn't just a regular family man. He was also quite active in the local Chamber of Commerce, and he played quite an active role. And he was a real figure in the local community.
Gacy had started to build the perfect life for himself, but he was concealing a dark secret. He developed an unhealthy sexual interest in young boys.
There was a son of a fellow JC member who he lured back to his home and he sexually assaulted. So he's abusing power. He's getting into these positions of trust and he's taking advantage, and that's a theme that's going to continue for him.
And then when the kid revealed this to his father, and Gacy was arrested for it, Gacy hired another teenager to intimidate this kid, to lure this kid into some remote place and spray mace in his eyes and beat him up and warn him against testifying in Gacy's case.
Despite Gacy's efforts, his victim still testified, but there wasn't conclusive proof of an attack. Therefore, police were only able to charge him with sodomy of the 15-year-old boy.
He pleaded guilty to 1 count of sodomy, thinking he would get a very, very minimal sentence. But the judge threw the book at him, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
On the 3rd of December 1968, Gacy was sent to Anamosa State Penitentiary. Whilst in jail, Gacy's wife divorced him. A further blow was dealt when his father died, and he was denied permission to attend the funeral.
Given the perfect nature of Gacy's ability to groom whomever he came into contact with, within a matter of months, Gacy had become head cook at the prison, had convinced the staff that he was an absolutely ideal person. What's more, then convinced the parole board that he was no danger to anybody, and so served barely 18 months of the 10 years of his original sentence.
In June 1970, now aged 28, John Wayne Gacy was released from prison and returned home to Chicago. His friends, family and neighbors were entirely unaware of what had taken place while he'd been living over 300 miles away in Iowa.
His background was not looked into in any way, I think partly because he didn't go into any line of work in which any kind of background check would have been necessary. You know, he began his own business. I mean, none of his acquaintance was even remotely aware of his criminal background.
In June 1972, Gacy got married for a second time, and he and his new bride set up home in the Chicago suburbs at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue. A house that would eventually become one of the most infamous addresses in America. 6 years later, in December 1978, 10 miles from Gacy's house, 15-year-old Des Plaines resident Rob Peast was reported missing by his mother. Detectives Mike Albrecht and Dave Hackmeister began to investigate the teen's disappearance.
Rob Peast was like a stellar kid. I mean, he was the kind of kid that anyone would want as a son. Never been in trouble, never had any inclination to run away, was a good student, very, very much out of character. He would turn up missing. So, that caught our attention, obviously.
And at that time in the late 70s, there was a lot of stuff going on with the hippie movement, all that kind of stuff. But he made a determination very quickly that this was not a normal, quote-unquote, runaway. He didn't have any girlfriend problems, was not involved in drugs or anything like that. He was just an all-American good kid.
At the time of his disappearance, Peast was working at a pharmacy in Des Plaines.
So he had told an employee and actually his mother that he was going to go talk to a contractor about a job. And he then went out the back door, and he wasn't seen any time thereafter.
Rob Peast seemed to have just vanished off the face of the earth. The two detectives desperately needed to track down the contractor, who was probably the last person to see him. Their search would lead them to the door of a 36-year-old man by the name of John Wayne Gacy. He divorced his second wife 2 years previously and was now running a successful business called PDM Contractors. Gacy would often employ young men, one of whom was Tony Antonucci.
At the time when I met him, I was about 16 years old. And of course, like a lot of 16-year-olds, I wanted to get a job so I could afford to have my car. My first impressions were that he was basically a likable guy, kind of jovial, liked to joke around, appeared very normal.
Gacy seemed, in many ways, like the perfect boss.
Sometimes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, John would say, "Hey, it's a nice day out. Let's knock off early and have some fun or do something," and all normal stuff. Just kind of like you didn't expect, your boss to be the one that wanted to knock off early.
Another young man who'd come looking for a job was 15-year-old Rob Peast, but he hadn't been seen since meeting with Gacy at the pharmacy where he worked. Detectives Dave Hackmeister and Mike Albrecht were investigating.
We ran a records check on him, and as it turns out, he had a fairly lengthy background. He had spent some time in Iowa for sodomy, and so it was sexual crimes basically against children.
Concerned by Gacy's criminal record, the police obtained a warrant to search his home.
The warrant consisted of 3 facts. The first fact is that John Wayne Gacy, in fact, was at the pharmacy the night Rob Peast went missing. And fact 2, that Rob Peast had told people that he was going to see a contractor regarding a job. And fact 3, his criminal background. So on those 3 facts, they were able to obtain a search warrant.
On the 13th of December 1978, police conducted their first search of Gacy's home, finding a number of suspicious items.
They recovered various items of pornography. They recovered some books that were titled Pretty Boys Must Die. They also recovered driver's licenses of other young people. When they did a check on those driver's licenses, it was determined that those kids were also reported missing.
Initially, we're hoping to find Rob Peast alive someplace. And it didn't take long to realize that probably was not going to happen.
Another item recovered was a high school ring, which had belonged to missing 19-year-old John Schick, last seen in January 1977. Further investigation discovered that 2 of Gacy's employees had been reported missing. 17-year-old John Butkovich, last seen in July 1975, and Gregory Godzik, also 17 years old, missing since December 1976.
It was an evolution as we went along. I think it was after that search warrant, we're pretty confident there's at least 5 or 6 victims that were associated with Gacy that hadn't been seen.
But with no evidence or bodies, the police could not make an arrest. They decided to begin surveillance on Gacy.
We just said, wherever you go, we're going. If Gacy went into a public place, we were going to follow him in and see what he was up to.
Throughout this overt surveillance, we became fairly friendly with John Wayne Gacy. He knew we were following him. He tried to be cordial with us. In fact, he initiated conversations with us.
He played games with the police. He'd go up to their car and say, "Hi, do you guys want some marijuana?" Or do something stupid like that.
He goes into Moose Lodge, and Mike and I, my partner and I, said, we're going to go in right along with Gacy, but we'll sit at a different table. All of a sudden, the waitress comes over with a couple of beers and places of beers in front of us and says, "It's on that gentleman over there." We look over at John, and John gives us the high sign, and we wave back.
Very confident, cocky. Kept on bragging about all property and how much of a businessman he was and how well-connected he was.
John Wayne Gacy had a psychopathic personality, so he really does seek out power and he seeks out control, and he likes playing with people. He's a bit of a puppet master, and I think that was driving his behavior.
Everyone that we talked to just loved John Wayne Gacy. His neighbors, his co-workers, all of his associates, they loved the guy. And we could see that. I mean, the way he was interacting with us was basically the same. And my partner and I would have to, on many occasions, remind one another, hey, listen, you know, this guy is dangerous.
Gacy was considered an upstanding key member of his small community. He was popular and involved in politics. At weekends, he would even dress as a clown and perform for children at parties and at local hospitals.
The fact that Gacy had this other persona as Pogo the Clown, professional clowns usually, will paint their smiles, with sort of gentle, circular things around their lips. Gacy's smile looks like bat wings. There's just something horrifically sinister and monstrous about this figure of Pogo. Just an element that raises Gacy to the level of a kind of mythic American monster.
At one point, chillingly, he says to the detectives, clowns can get away with murder. Well, never was a truer word said. But it took some time for those detectives to fully comprehend that here was a man who was capable of murder, and more than one.
As Mike and Dave continued with their surveillance, detectives back at the station were trying to get another warrant to search Gacy's house. They'd received some disturbing new evidence while questioning his colleagues.
They're young kids, 17, 18, 19 years old. And at times, Gacy had ordered these young kids to go down into his crawl space of his home and dig trenches. And he had told them that there was a sewage issue and that he needed the trenches dug so he could alleviate that situation. But they said that it happened several times and that there was an odor down there that was just unbelievable. So now we're starting to believe, hey, is it possible? I know it sounds crazy, but is it possible he could have buried someone in the crawl space?
He gets other people unwittingly involved in his offending, and they don't know anything of what's going on. And I think that's what gets him gratification, the fact that he has such power over other people, that they're not joining the dots together, and that he's able to hide in plain sight.
Mike and Dave continued to follow the popular contractor, but they had a plan to force Gacy's hand.
We were on the surveillance for about 7 days. And as the surveillance progressed, what we found out was that he had this huge core support of friends and family and co-workers and the such, and that is really what was the barrier between us and Gacy. So we developed a plan for the investigators to put some pressure on all of these people that were supporting him, and slowly they started peeling back from Gacy And we were feeding Gacy information that there's possibly looking to execute a second search warrant. He became more and more desperate. And the last day, it was about midnight or 1 in the morning, he contacted his attorneys and met his attorneys in their office in Park Ridge. At that point, Mike and I are outside, and we see the attorneys waving us into the building. It was very uncharacteristic of the attorneys to do this.
The first thing they were telling us, though, is to park your cars in front of Gacy's and don't let him on. If he tries to move, shoot his tires out. You know, what's going on here?
It was very obvious to us that the attorneys were absolutely scared to death, petrified. They're pacing up and down. They won't take their eyes off of Gacy. And that pretty much solidified the fact to us that he had confessed to his attorneys about at least a couple, 3 murders.
Dave and Mike knew that Gacy was beginning to buckle. They continued to trail him as he left his attorney's office.
So we follow Gacy, and Gacy is driving like a madman, and he drives to the Shell gas station where he did all of his business. He goes in, and we see a transaction happen in the gas station.
It was very emotional, shaking his hand and almost on his side, hugging that kind of thing. And this is so out of context for Gacy.
So when Gacy comes back out, jumps in his car and takes off, I go back in the gas station, and when I go in there, they throw a couple of bags of marijuana at me, the employees, and they say, hey, listen, we didn't buy this, we didn't ask for it, Gacy just gave it to us.
As Gacy's behavior grew more and more erratic, the 2 detectives at least now had a reason to apprehend him.
We make a decision at that point to arrest him for the drug transaction that happened at the Shell gas station. So we cut off the car, pull Gacy out of the car, and arrest him for the drug transaction.
Devon in Milwaukee.
This was Gacy's final location of freedom.
That's it.
He was never free from this point on.
Grabbed him out of the car. He was all whining to us, why are you doing this to me and all that. And that's where it ended.
So technically, he was arrested for marijuana possession and delivery. And then we took him to the station.
While in custody, Gacy told detectives he was experiencing chest pains and was taken to a local hospital as a precaution. But he was just trying to buy some more time. The police had obtained the second warrant they'd been so desperate for. On the 21st of December 1978, they searched Gacy's home on West Somerdale Avenue for the second time.
When they executed that search warrant, they went in the crawl space, and the very first shovel that they dug, they found human remains.
Police had finally unearthed the secrets that Gacy had thought would stay buried forever.
So they immediately called me, let me know that there was human remains in a crawl space, and at that time I arrested John Gacy for murder. Gacy says he wants to confess, but really he wants to confess to the surveillance team, both myself and my partner and the other team. And now all of a sudden he's got an audience again, and he's on top of the world, and he knows he can't get out of it at this point, and so he might as well just divulge everything that actually happened.
Gacy told detectives he was willing to draw a map of the burial site beneath his home.
I gave him a pen, and he started right up. He squared it off in the thing, and he started, well, this was a double, and this was a triple, and this was the first guy with put an X on it. Went around the whole crawl space with these places where the body was buried. I mean, they were digging with spoons and everything, but they...
Alrighty. I'm going to end here for tonight, and I'm done with this drawing for now. Yeah, so this is Dick Momo. It's a cosplay done by Cosplay. So yeah, we're done. It's been a late night, and I'm happy with this. I'm gonna end here. I'm gonna end the stream here on Giovanni Hall Art. You can follow me on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, X, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, and Patreon for more. I'll post the finished artwork on my social media art accounts. Yeah, feel free to follow me. Alright, hope you guys have a good one. Good night. Bye.